microphone?
Oh, yeah, there is somebody else who's here, yes.
Oh, they're in the dark.
They're in the
Sleeping
dark.
there.
Hidden back there.
Okay,
Okay,
I think we're all set.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I have 6:03. We do have a quorum of voting commissioners. We have 3 present here physically and 1 online. So
And we
with
get
that,
extra credit, right?
no extra credit, sorry, not tonight. With that, I will open up tonight's meeting of the Mashpee Conservation Commission for Thursday, February 23, 2023. We are meeting here in the Quiet Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. This meeting is being broadcast live on local cable channel 18, and it is also streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we begin, if you would join me in a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Marjorie, could you grab that clipboard for public comment? I don't know if anybody has signed up on that.
Oh, sure. I'll start it going around, right? Or do you
Well,
want?
is there anybody signed
No,
up?
there's no one that's signed up yet.
No one signed up.
Okay.
Anybody want us to sign up? No? Leave us
Okay.
a note? No?
All right, because that's the first thing
Then I'll
on my
just-
agenda. So as I open up the meeting, I would ask if there is somebody here from the public that would like to make a comment on any subjects that are not posted on our agenda this evening. Hearing none, then we will move into the pre- and post-hearing agenda items. Do we have enough time to take this first one, discussion of, before I open up the hearing?
I think probably should move to the first hearing.
Okay, yeah, because we started a little bit late.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to open up our first hearing rather than do any pre-hearing agenda items. And this hearing is posted for 6 o'clock. It's for Lawrence M. and Heidi E. Raffon of 10 Triton Way. This is a proposed addition to an existing single-family dwelling. The representative is Holmes and McGrath Incorporated. This hearing is continued from December 8th, 2022, and December 12th, 2023. This is a request for determination of applicability. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering / Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicants and homeowners of this property. As I just mentioned, the hearing was continued twice before without being open. The reason for those continuances is because the agent went to the site and there was some activity done on the property that needed to be reviewed further before this RDA would be allowed to open and be presented before this commission. So we are here tonight because the applicants want to expand their kitchen, and this RDA is to show where the proposed expansion of the kitchen is going to be. The wetland resources are land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and a coastal bank. This is one of those properties that Nantucket Sound hits the revetment, and it's suddenly a coastal bank all the way to the top of the coastal bank, and then we have the buffer zones towards the house. So on the plan that you see in front of you, the proposed addition is currently a roofed patio porch. So it's already part of the lot coverage by structures. It's already structures, it's already development. What the homeowners want to do is remove the patio from that section and make it part of the kitchen, so they're expanding the house onto that area. So there is no encroachment to the buffer zones. It's not getting closer to the coastal bank, not getting closer to the ocean, and not getting closer to land subject to coastal stone floors. In fact, the addition is not even in land subject to coastal stone floors or any of the other resources, but it is within the buffer zone to the coastal bank. The project was continued because there was some cutting of vegetations on the property. The property does have prior vista pruning in perpetuity, but the clearing that's been done exceeded what was permitted, and that will be rectified with the Conservation Department moving on. The homeowners have been made aware that there is a particular window that they have permission to do this vista. At some point, somebody forgot to keep that in line, but it has been noted, and the applicant is willing to adhere to that permit. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. I guess my first question is, how much cutting did take place?
So practically, the shrubs were cut from property line to property line,
So the entire length of the property line?
the width of the property, yes. From the top of the bank towards the edge of the landscaping. There is a border of landscaping plants, and then there's what's natural vegetation to the top of the bank.
Okay. And what would be the plan for mitigating that infraction?
So when we discovered it, the type of vegetation, the majority of vegetation is actually rugosa rose that lines the top of the bank. You can kind of see it in this image here, right along here. That makes up the majority. There is some other native shrubs mixed in here, but based on our observation, the cutting was basically done down to an average height of about 3 feet. And it's nothing that was done that I would consider to be causing any sort of adverse impact to the bank itself. It didn't result in any sort of erosion. It is a partially armored coastal bank. So our recommendation in this scenario is as Raul mentioned, we found the plan, and it's actually 2 vista corridors that come out on this side of the property here. It's 2 separate corridors. This was an older permit. Sometimes when there's extensive frontage along a resource area, past commissioners allowed the corridor to be split up into 2, and that was what happened on this property. So one corridor comes out here, another one kind of off this post out here, and they're just separated. So instead of the pruning taking place within those corridors, it went from one end of the property to the other. But the simple solution in this matter is really just to require on-sites for the next 2 years of vista pruning with the contractor, homeowner, so we make sure everybody's on the same page about where these corridors exist and where the pruning is relegated to, and allowing everything else outside of those corridors to grow back naturally, which nothing has been done that would prevent that from happening. So it's a relatively easy fix, considering that they had gone outside the initial vista pruning corridors.
So the rugosa would remain and just be allowed to grow back to its natural height?
Correct, which wouldn't really get very high in this, probably.
Probably less than the wind.
Yeah, it's not gonna get
At
much
this
higher.
location, I doubt they'll get to 5 feet.
Probably
It's
not.
pretty windy out here.
Yeah.
It looks like they just, any raggedy limb, they cut them to, and it's like a fixed 2.5 feet
Yeah,
in
Kind of
height.
like a hedge.
yeah.
Kind
exactly.
of, right.
Yes.
There were no trees within this buffer zone that were cut or anything like that. It's just shrubbery, mostly rugosa.
Any questions or comments from other commissioners? Start with
I have a
Lisa.
question.
Yes, Aaron, go ahead.
The pruning that was done, that was outside of the permits, was that done as like by accident because it changed hands, or was it the same owner just forgot? I'm just wondering if it's something that we can prevent in the future by baking it into the, deed or whatnot.
Yeah, so my knowledge, I think it's the same homeowner's owned this property, so they just did not pay attention to the plan of record that showed the Vista corridor. They may have at the very onset, it was before my time, it's a much older permit. But by informing them, getting confirmation of their understanding of what the issue is, and having this 2-year requirement for an onsite to ensure that we're all on the same page about what must take place moving forward. And additionally, if this happens again, there can be additional enforcement action, and the homeowner understands that. So that was our recommendation, was to just have increased oversight, at least for the next 2 years, possibly more, to ensure that we're essentially all on the same page with the permit conditions and the existing corridors that were allowed by the commission back when this permit was issued.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be on board with longer than 2 years.
Marjorie?
I just have one question, Drew, on your agent's comments here. I want to make sure I understand. The Board of Health comments talks about the 3 bedrooms, Title V inspection, et cetera, and then it goes to the building department, but the building department didn't report back to us, or are we to assume that all is well there?
So yeah, he was given our full agenda, and he doesn't have any comments on this. We can certainly follow up to make sure that that's, if he has additional
Yeah.
comments, but he was given the agenda and he has no comments, so.
So just passing it on, I'm assuming that the 3 bedrooms with your addition goes up to 4?
The addition is expansion of the existing kitchen,
Okay.
so it does not deal with bedrooms,
It won't impact the number of bedrooms?
no.
And what is the current status with the Title V inspection with the building department? Now, so it went to the
Not-
Board of Health, and you all set, are you all set in the Board of Health?
No, the kitchen expansion doesn't have to go to the Board of Health. The proposed modifications does not change the number of bedrooms, so therefore,
It doesn't?
it doesn't affect the septic system.
Okay. So whatever we have to do, just to double check that they didn't gloss over it.
The health agent received the agenda and provided feedback on the comments, so they're saying that it's kind of their standard commentary whenever there's a proposed addition or increase in footprint to a home, that they just reiterate what the existing septic system can handle. Any additional habitable space that meets the definition of a bedroom be considered an increase in flow and we require a septic upgrade. A Title V inspection is required whenever a change of footprint is proposed, so they're going to do a Title V inspection.
So they will,
They will.
but it
yes.
just hasn't been done yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from those in attendance? Hearing none. Drew, do you have any other comments you'd like to add?
Nope, I think everything's been covered that I have in my comments.
Okay.
No additional comments.
Okay, then. I would entertain a motion. And the recommendation is a motion for a negative determination.
Do you need a motion?
I do.
I move for Lawrence and Heidi Raffone on Trident Way, number 10, that we move forward with the negative determination on the RDA.
Thank you, Marjorie. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Sandra. Any discussion on the motion that we have on the table by the commissioners? Doesn't look like we have any, so I'll do a roll call vote. Marjorie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now calling the 6:03 hearing for Francis V. and Christine L. Castellucci, 23 Keel Way. This is an after-the-fact proposed raise and replace of an existing pool and existing shed and utilities. The representative is Gade Masonry and Landscaping, and this is an RDA. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi, good evening. My name's Joe Anastas, and I'm a general contractor who was hired by the client to do a bunch of work, one of which was to replace a pool. I hired Gade Masonry to do that. And before I turn it over to Felipe Nevers, I would just like to update on the circumstances of where we're at, if that's okay. So before we started the project, we went down to Conservation and let them know what we were doing, and that we would be changing the pool, changing the shape, and removing demo. I was told that as long as I stayed pretty much where I was supposed to stay, everything would be okay. They came out, they marked the trees, which was great. We then applied for a pool permit, which met all the requirements, and they received the pool permit. Additionally, I applied for a building permit to raise the shed and put a new pool shed, which my permit was also granted. Then we started the demo. I guess what's in question is, in my opinion, just a inadvertent miscommunication, whereas we demoed the pool, which was a kidney-shaped pool, and I have some pictures that we can send around. And we were putting in a rectangle pool. Surrounded around the kidney pool was rotten wood decking. So we removed it all because we were changing the shape and we were putting in a patio. So about 4 weeks ago, there was a stop work order, and we came down to see Daniel and Drew, and they explained to us that they did not receive, apparently, that we were going to be doing that to the decking. So we filled out all the paperwork, and we're here today. And I guess my biggest question is, how was I supposed to take out the pool if it's a kidney shape without removing the rotting deck and replacing it with stone patio? And the other part of this was that this set us back 4 or 5 weeks on a project that is supposed to be done by the summer, and to be honest, the customer's not very happy. But at this point, I can turn it over to Felipe, and he can explain to you what he did in terms of the pool.
Hey, we basically did was the demolition of existing gunite pool. It was a previous kidney shape, and we used the same blueprint, exactly what was in the property before. We didn't went far any inch of it, any side of it, and yeah, basically it. That's what we did so far. We just did that. That's the drawing you're seeing right now is the proposed new shape, and with the permit applied.
We've already poured it.
And we already poured the concrete. It's all like in forms, but now we just like a hold in there. That's where we are right now.
All set?
Yeah, we did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I spent some time on the site yesterday. I looked at the configuration of the pool. I saw the embankments that have been created. I saw some of the scarring on the trees, a lot of debris in the area. Took a lot of photographs. And then started to do a little bit of homework. I have some questions on the paperwork that you've submitted. When I look at the diagrams of the pool, the computer imagery of the pool itself with the dimensions on it says that the pool is 40 by 15. I didn't measure the pool yesterday when I was out there. Are those the measurements of the pool, 40 by 15?
Actually, it's 36. It's a little smaller than what I put on the
Well,
drawings.
that's what I was going to ask, because as I go deeper into your paperwork, it says that the pool is 36 by
Yep, it's
15.
15 by 36. That is the final measurements in there.
And the configuration of the pool in the paperwork that you provided is the complete opposite of the existing pool that's there now. The steps leading into that structure are on the other side of the pool, not this side.
Which was a request by the
Yeah,
homeowner.
the homeowner asked to reshape that and put it on the other side.
Okay. So let me ask you this. As I look at the dimensions that are on the computer drawing that you provided, the pool, I guess, is irrelevant because the hardscape patio that you want to create around it is really what I'm concerned about. And I'm looking at all these dimensions, and I come down one side at 37.3. I go along the bottom at 68.10. So what I'm doing is I'm taking those 3 inches off of 37 and putting them over to 13, and I'll give you an inch there. So I'm calling that 37 by 69. You
Okay.
okay with that?
Absolutely.
Then I come up to the jog towards the house, and I'm only estimating, but I'm thinking that 24 feet that goes from the house to the pool, I'm thinking that's probably 16. It looks like 2/3 of the way.
That would be like 14, right? 10 from the foundation to the pool and 24 total.
Okay.
So that side of the house is like 14.
I don't see any dimensions for the shed. Is this the same size shed that was?
No,
on
that
the
was just a
lot
mere representation on it.
Yeah, he didn't, he was applying for the pool permit.
Yeah.
I applied for the building permit.
Okay.
And it's totally separate. The building permit for the shed really wasn't in question. It was more the pool, as far as the surround of the pool. And if I just may address the debris, we were in the process of cleaning that up when we had to stop. So we didn't, they wanted to go back there. I told them they couldn't, so,
Sure,
yeah.
sure, that makes sense. So can I
That shed
assume-
itself is just to represent it, what it was existing shed before, that pool house. That I just kind of mimic what it was there before.
So I can assume that the new shed that's going in is the exact same size as the old shed that came out?
Yeah, the only difference would be that it has a different shape.
There's a different shape?
Yeah.
But the
This-
footprint's the same?
Yeah, that one was like this. This is more of a square.
Okay. And on that side of the property where the shed's located,
Mm-hmm.
there's a public access way to the water?
No, I don't think so.
Am I
There's-
mistaken on
There's a
that?
fence behind that. I don't.
So they access.
I think
from
it's on the
behind
other side of that fence.
Yes.
Right, okay. So that's not blocking
No,
that access path?
no,
No, it's fenced already.
no, no.
So my concern is this, when I looked at what you're proposing, I came up with 3,129 square feet of disturbance. That would be the entire decking area, the hardscape patio, assuming the shed's the same. That's what I got for square footage. And then I pulled the assessor's card to get the square footage of what's already disturbed on the lot. And going by the figures that are on file with the assessor's department, the house is 2348, the porch was 40, the attached garage is 594, the deck that you removed is 130, and I actually measured out the driveway at 20 by 25, so there's another 500 square feet there. So when I take what's existing for disturbed area on this lot, and then I add on what you're proposing for new disturbed area, I come up to roughly 6,700 square feet. Now, Regulation 25, which controls this lot, which is land subject to coastal flow, says you can only disturb 5,000. So I'm a little concerned how this squares off with,
Well, I have to tell you that the part that was against the house was existing
right?
as well, and part of that was not decking, it was
Okay.
shrubbery, and part of it was a wood separate deck from the pool deck.
Okay,
There was a space between them, but that was completely rotted as well. This wood was in really, really bad shape. So we took that down for them as well, and we were just doing patios there. From what I understand, the patio, is not lot coverage as a deck would be.
I'm not talking about lot coverage. What I'm
Okay.
talking about is disturbance within the land subject to coastal flow. I believe the entire lot is land subject to coastal flow.
It is.
So Regulation 25 governs that for us, and it only allows for a disturbance of up to 5,000 square feet. So I'm having a hard time looking at the request for a negative determination on this because I see some conditioning that really needs to take place.
So if you're suggesting that we cut back on the square footage to meet that requirement, I mean, then that's something that we would take back and do. I mean, that's not, I think that his diagram, although he's tried to be precise, is more of a computer-generated diagram.
Sure.
So if we have to cut back on the coverage, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. Where do we stand with, I noticed in your packet, let me find that, the status on the zoning board of appeals jurisdiction, because this is raise and replace of an existing structure. Did you file for a hearing with them?
I did not, I was not told that I had to. I went through the building department, I went through the Board of Health, just like I normally do. I was granted my building permit, he was granted his pool permit, and this was
That's why I feel
what
that
it
out.
is.
Yeah. Drew, can you help me out with this question? Because I'm kind of lost on this. It's a raise and replace of a structure. And the raise and replace bylaw, I believe, requires,
Well, that's how I filled it out on my permit request, that it was a raise and replace.
but in terms of conservation, we have a bylaw which requires an applicant to either apply for or obtain all necessary permits. And what I'm questioning is, do you indeed need a necessary permit from the ZBA for raise and replace? Because you are raising and replacing a structure.
I was not told that I needed to do that.
Well, I guess that's why we're here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, I filled out the normal application that I typically do, submitted the plans, submitted everything, and
I did the same.
was granted my permit. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Well, I've been reviewing the paperwork, as you can tell.
Yeah.
I'm doing my homework here.
Sure.
And this form neither says that it needs it, nor it doesn't need it. And I would like to see that clarified, because we really can't conclude this hearing without that question being answered.
Well, I don't know, I'm a little confused, to be perfectly honest. When I apply for the building permit and I fill out the application and I tell them that I'm demoing and that I'm building a new structure and I submit the plan,
Right.
and I do everything that they ask me to do, and then they give me a permit, I don't understand why I would have to go back at this point, to be perfectly honest.
I can't speak for what the building department does or does not do, but I know we have our regulations, and unless I'm misreading something here, I think it's a question that begs an answer.
Is this something, Mr. Chairman, that we would go to town council to clarify?
No.
That's not an issue.
No.
So it's really
No,
whether or not, can it be conditioned?
I would suggest a continuance until we can get verification that, A, they do or do not have to go before the zoning board, and B, if they do, then we can proceed once we know that the applicant has filed for necessary permit.
And that's really not something that the building department is required to tell them, right? I mean, it's sort of like due diligence, is it?
So if I can speak to this. I don't know why Form 3 wasn't checked off as does or does not apply for the ZBA. You're saying the building inspector issued you a building permit for this?
Yeah, I have it right here.
Both of them. Yeah.
There's a copy of it in the packet.
Yeah. Okay.
And I went to him and I asked him, that I said we got to stop work order, and he said that he did not believe that that had anything to do with my building, that it was more about the pool issue. So, I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm incorrect in assuming that a swimming pool is a permanent structure, and if you're going to raise and replace it, it's a structure, whether it's a big house or a small swimming pool. I could be reading it wrong, but I don't want to proceed in error and overlook a detail that needs to be answered.
Again, I don't know what to say, other than I just did what I was asked to do. And to be perfectly honest, it would, I mean, to put this project off further would certainly push this project back to where they probably are not going to get into this pool for the summer. And that's tough.
Yep.
And we feel like
My-
we feel like we kind of went through all the right steps, you know?
Yeah, I think that my suggestion would be that I would recommend the commission move forward with a decision on this project as is currently presented, with the understanding that they'll stay within that 5,000 square foot limit for land subject to coastal storm flow. And in the meantime, before we issue the RDA, we would have an opportunity to discuss with the building commissioner. He did issue a building permit, so at this point, I don't think it makes much sense to continue the hearing, considering that the building commissioner issued a permit already. We can simply go back, talk to the building inspector and get clarification, and if he needs to submit a new form or revised form that says it does not need to go to zoning, or maybe it does, but I don't feel that a continuance is warranted in this situation when we have the opportunity to follow up with the building commissioner, and the focus should really be about the impact of land subject to coastal storm flow, which they had said, and you can condition, it's not common to condition an RDA, but you can condition that it cannot exceed the 5,000 square foot threshold. I think it's a simple enough thing at this point to get clarification on without the need for a continuance.
Okay,
Just my
we appreciate
recommendation.
that. And we
It's just a
definitely-
recommendation. The chairman is ultimately
Yeah.
going to decide what's best moving forward, but that's my recommendation, because I
Okay.
think that communication can be clarified easy enough without pushing this off another 2 weeks.
Other comments from commissioners?
I would just have a question for you, Mr. Chairman. Would you be satisfied with a condition that we do as Drew is recommending? We move forward and you insert that language, this very valid concern, for there to be clarification thereunder, and if and when that happens, it just moves forward. Would you be content with that?
All I've seen are these photographs of
Right.
the pre-existing conditions, but I have no idea what size of a deck is really here. It's hard for me to envision in
Yeah.
a picture, is this 35 feet, is it 28 feet? Do you have measurements for the pre-existing deck?
I don't. What I do have is a land survey that was done when they bought the property back in May. It doesn't give us 100% dimensions, but you could see where it sits on the lot. If
That's
I-
in the packet, right? Did I see a small picture of that
I
in the
don't
packet?
think this one is, no. I don't think this one
No?
is, no.
Sure, let's take a look at that. Yes, this is what's in the packet, but it's
Yeah.
much smaller. I can probably see better on that, but there's no dimensions here at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, yeah.
But cutting back to the 5,000 is not an issue for us at all. If that meets the requirements, then that's what it is.
What, So you said the pool is 36 by 15.
Correct.
I'm just wondering how much of a deck we're really talking about here.
If I'm not mistaken, in that drawing is about 2,400 square feet.
3,400
Yeah, the-
square feet?
The whole,
Did you say 24?
2,400.
2,400.
I was going to say, it's still going to be over. Even at 2,400, you're going to be over. Because
Yeah.
I've got about 3,100 square feet between the house and everything else that's there.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Perhaps we just, we go to the site and we mark out appropriately what the patio would be, and welcome the commission to come take a look at that, if that helps to further this along.
And what about drainage coming, this is, these are pavers, right?
Yep.
That you're putting in. So where's the runoff going to from this patio?
So we're going to put in a dry well so we can collect. He's got, this is a salt water.
Salt chlorination water.
Chlorination, so there's no filter, no.
No chemicals.
No chemicals. So,
It's
yeah.
basically salt water.
We're actually connecting the water from the pool shed directly to the septic.
And for the maintenance piece on the pool itself, we've had similar presentations, and we've dealt with dry wells, we've talked about trucks taking the water off-site. The pools need to be maintained, they need to be drawn down, there's no information about that.
Well,
There's a lot of components to this project that I just don't feel comfortable with.
Well, because it's a salt water, chlorinated, so there's no chemicals in that water. So we can drain that pool off without having to worry about chemicals or anything going into the ground or out to the street or any of that stuff. I mean, we've done this, a number of times. One of the advantages of that salt water pool is not to have to worry about the chemicals.
Well, as Drew mentioned, typically we don't condition requests for determinations. It's not a practice that we do. Occasionally, there might be one little issue that you can deal with, but we're looking at the size of the disturbance, we're talking about maintaining the pool, we're talking about runoff now coming off of this. There's a lot of issues here, and I don't feel comfortable with a negative determination. But I'll ask the commissioners for a motion. That's where we are. So with that, oh, excuse me, I didn't ask for the public. Is there any comments from those in attendance for the project? No, I see none. Okay, so now I'll come back to the commissioners that are present and ask for a motion.
So you would make a motion. I just want to know where you stand on this, because it's really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you-
You're looking to turn it down altogether or extend a
No,
continuance?
it's a request for a determination of applicability. So
And you want to
can-
say no?
The agent is recommending a negative determination.
Right.
Which we could throw some conditions on, talk to the building department, see what we can work out. Your other alternative would be a positive determination, which would trigger them to have to come back and file a notice of intent for
Yeah.
the project, and then we could condition everything from A to Z.
But can you live with the other? Can you live with, not a positive determination, but with a negative determination with conditions for building, for, I'm not quite sure what to do with your concern about,
Well, you don't have to worry about my concern.
well,
You-
yeah, I do, because I defer to your seniority here in terms of the three areas that you're concerned with.
Right. Well, those are my concerns, so I'm not very comfortable with a negative determination. But I'll work with it if it's a motion that's on the table and has a second. We can then discuss it.
Aaron, what do you think?
I'm wondering, is this something that we typically would have seen as an NOI with, more detailed plans and such, or, because it looks like a bigger project?
Well,
Do you want me to- oh,
if there was a positive determination, that would be the alternative, that they could file a notice of intent, and then we would have a very thorough look at the project itself, to look at it for whatever it needs. Some of the issues that we talked about tonight, maybe some other issues, we would, in a notice of intent, we would have an architectural plan with the exact dimensions for everything. And, there might be another issue that we haven't even seen here tonight, I don't know.
I guess that's my point. I'm saying is this is something that would typically be in an OI, correct?
It may or may not be, it depends on.
This is a 30-year-old pool that's been there that we're enhancing, upgrading. removing a tremendous amount of rotted wood that's,
I
that's
get all of
leaching
that.
into the ground.
I get all of that. I listened to everything that you had to say.
Okay.
In all due respect.
Yep.
And I'm asking for a motion from one
Got
of the
it.
commissioners.
Okay.
And if I get a motion, I'm going to open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners.
Thank you.
And then we'll proceed with that.
I can assist with Aaron's question if you want me
Sure,
to.
yes.
So typically, Aaron, at least from my experience, when you're dealing with a replacement of structure in the same footprint, that was the reason we recommended an RDA, because there's no expansion towards the resource area. So as long as it's understood that, you know, through whatever means that the 5,000 square foot threshold is met under land subject to coastal storm flow, and there is indeed no expansion to the resource area, in my opinion, there's no need for conditioning, which is the whole purpose of a notice of intent. If you're keeping within the same footprint, what is the disturbance? Now, there are questions, obviously, as far as drainage. It is a very flat site. It is a non-chemical cleansing mechanism for the pool. So when you look at all those factors, and this is just my opinion, I think it's justified as an RDA, and I still recommend a negative determination with conditions, because I think the conditions can be easily met. Communication with the building inspector can be easily achieved. And I just think it's the simplistic nature of this keeps it, in my opinion, as an RDA. That can be conditioned to answer these questions and concerns.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, then, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make a motion for a negative determination conditioned upon communication with the building inspector to clarify issues. I'm going to need your help on the issues that you want specific answers to, but I think we've articulated them. I'm not sure, Drew, I'll take your wording as well. But let me just make the motion first, and then we can talk about the pros and the cons of which one. But with that, as a condition, and addressing those concerns, I would make a motion for a negative determination.
A second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Thank you, Aaron. I will now open up the motion on the table for discussion amongst the commissioners.
Well, can I just say, under discussion, I'm really sensitive to the homeowners and the guidance from the Conservation Commission to actually go with this as an RDA, and for all the reasons. You know, they're under that. There's a lot of good coming out of this. There's a lot of questions, very valid, particularly yours, Mr. Chairman, that I think can be answered with a little time. And it appears as though our agent has got confidence that if we go to the building department, the building inspector himself, that we can answer a lot of these and put conditions in that satisfy the members of the commission, that the right thing is being done. That's just, I think, anytime you can move it down the journey of discussion, it's good for all of us.
Anything else? Sandy, any comments or?
No, I mean, I'm sort of leaning towards your concerns. You know, I understand the homeowners too, but sometimes I think we push some of these projects too fast.
Good point,
Well,
valid point.
I certainly agree with you, Marjorie. Nobody wants to see a project held up in limbo. I've really done a lot of homework on this project, and I have a lot of concerns. One of which is certainly not our purview, but, this may have to go before the ZBA. And if it does, it's going to need a variance. I mean, that's their ball of wax. I'm not worried about that. But I don't want to make a procedural error and say that, we're just going to approve this as a negative
Right.
determination. And
technically, we don't want to be a rubber stamp if ZBA is required, and it is. That's a gray area, right?
If this project were filed,
Yeah,
everything was set.
you're quite sure?
I'd be fine, but I'm not
Yeah.
because of that issue. I'm just not. Any other discussion amongst the commissioners? Anything else, Aaron?
So,
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Marjorie?
Yes?
Sandy?
No.
Aaron?
yes.
I vote no. It's a tie vote, motion does not carry. Is there a secondary motion of some kind that we can work with?
The only other motion that would be in order, if I'm understanding it all correctly, and I think I am, is that we have to make a motion to ask the homeowners to submit a different application and come back to us.
Procedurally, someone would make a motion for a positive determination,
Yeah?
which would, in effect, require the submission of a notice of intent.
The submission,
A submission of a notice of intent.
oh, the notice of intent, that's what I was thinking. So that's what we have to do first. We have to go positive.
Not a matter of have to if you want to,
Want to?
yes.
Even better.
Yep. So that would be the next step, is a motion for a positive determination.
Would, Mr. Chairman, is it in order for me to ask you if that would be satisfactory to you?
Well, there's not a lot of options. The
Yeah, that's
negative
what I'm wondering.
determination
That's
didn't
about it.
carry, so that's really your only option, is negative was tied and failed, so you would ask for a positive. Somebody would.
Aaron, does that make sense?
I guess so.
I hate to put you on the spot,
So
but such is life.
our only choice is to vote for a positive at this stage?
Yeah.
Okay.
But so Drew, what would the language be then? For positive, da-da-da-da-da. And then it's all on the homeowner to come back with a new application.
Correct.
We don't have to even state that in our motion.
It's inherent in the motion for a positive determination.
It's inherent.
That it requires a notice of intent submission. You're effectively saying this project needs to be conditioned through a notice of intent, through the motion for a positive determination.
Oh, it sounds like that's our only option. Can't go anywhere, we've got a tie, which is no.
So I'm willing to entertain a motion.
So I move for a positive determination. Castellucci, Christine and Francis, 23 Keel Way. Unless there's any amendments for language there under,
Okay?
that would be a simple motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. So I will now open up that motion, which is now on the table for discussion amongst the commissioners. Anything, Aaron?
No, thank you.
Okay. Then I'll take a roll call vote. Marjorie?
Yes?
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
No.
I vote yes. Motion carries.
Thank you for your presentation.
So we have to go to ZBA now, is that?
You have to file for a notice
A
of
notice of
intent for this project.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Now calling the 6:06 hearing for Robert S. Durant, trustee of 43 Horseshoe Bend Way. This is a proposed removal of an existing cesspool and upgrade to a Title V septic system. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a request for determination of applicability. Good evening.
Good evening, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the owners and applicant at 43 Horseshoe Bend Way. The project tonight is to replace a failing cesspool at this property with the existing house is a two-bedroom house, and the proposed replacement system will be a two-bedroom upgraded Title V septic system. The resource areas on site, to the southeast is Shumat Pond with the associated water, edge of water and BVW, as well as a inland bank that comes up the site and is shown as that blue line on the plan. The septic system is located as far landward as possible towards Horseshoe Bend Way. And also with respect to a vegetated, you'll see there's a naturally vegetated area at the upper right corner of this property. We're trying to avoid going into the naturally vegetated area, which is the reason for this L shape you see on the plan. And again, it's no increase in flow. There's no proposed additions to the dwelling. And the septic leach field is approximately 70 feet away as cited from the coastal bank. And again, that location was in an effort to utilize the existing areas that are accessed on the lot and minimize any kind of work in the naturally vegetated area. That's the proposal tonight. If we have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Mark, just a quick question. It says on the plan that you did not encounter any groundwater, and I would expect you would at that elevation. But it says that the estimated groundwater level is 43 feet.
At elevation 43 feet, which is the water level of the pond. So, and our septic system's up at 70, so that's a significant slope up. So the difference between that would be the physical depth, 70 to 43, so 27 feet.
27 feet. And typically, a Title V system requirement is what?
Minimum of 5 feet for sandy
Minimum of
soils.
5.
Correct,
So you're at 27 feet with a perk rate of 2 minutes an inch.
correct.
Any questions from the commissioners? Aaron, I'll defer to you first. Is there something you would like to ask or comment on?
So, just to clarify, what's there now is successful, and it's
Correct.
depicted,
I didn't catch that.
is it in the same areas where this is going in?
Yes, correct. It's some, we don't know exactly, but we know it's somewhere in the vicinity of the septic tank right now. So, and it's a cesspool only, you know, there's no tank before it, so.
Anything else, Aaron?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Marjorie?
Looks like it's in good shape to me.
Okay. Sandy? No questions? Any questions from members that are present here at the meeting? None? Drew, any
So,
comments? Or-
the health agent, I spoke with the health agent today, a couple of things that were raised as concerns that changes my recommendation as it's written currently. That, first of all, a portion of the septic upgrade falls within 75-foot setback to the top of inland bank. Based on Board of Health comments and their regulations, that requires an IA system when you're within 75 feet of a resource area, be it coastal bank, inland bank, or any other type of wetland. Additionally, this area, as was made known to me by the health agent today, the assistant agent, is that this is also in a Zone 2 water recharge area, which means it also has to receive UV additional treatment as part of an IA system. So this is going to require a continuance to a revised plan. If you wish to discuss any of the particulars with the health agent, I recommend that you do that during the continuance period, but I would recommend that the applicant request a continuance of the commission to speak with the Board of Health, go over these concerns, and that, based on my communication today, this is going to require an IA system based on Board of Health regulations.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
If, it's basically, if you notice, we have 3 chambers lined up straight and then a chamber changed at an angle. If we were to relocate the chamber closest to the bank, again, we cited it this particular way to avoid the vegetation. We
Right.
were to relocate it to the other end, we would be 75 feet away and therefore not meet that requirement. And yes, it is a Zone 2, however, we do meet the DEP requirements for no increase in flow. And so for this, I guess I'm polling the commission, if we were to meet the Board of Health regulations and requirements, would the commission require an IA? So, I mean, I can definitely accept the continuance and redesign. I'm just, you know, if we meet the requirements, the Board of Health says we are not required to install an IA. For this project, which is not an increase in flow, it's completely a repair. We're not even adding 10 square feet to the house. You know, the trade-off of that, those galleys that you see there are approximately 4 by 8, so it's another 8 foot by 6 foot area into the vegetation. But you gain another 8 feet away from the coastal bank. You know, is that something the commission, as long as we meet the Board of Health requirements, could we not be required to have an IA system, I guess, is if we're meeting their requirements for this repair?
I'll speak to that first, and then I'll allow the other commissioners to express their feelings. I learned of this issue at the 11th hour, pretty much walking into the room. So I need to review the Board of Health issues as well. But I know there are some people in this room that know me as the guy that always asks for an IA system, yourself included. I'm going to always fall back on what our principal charge is, and we are stewards of the environment. And I will do whatever I can possibly do It's found in our regulations to protect groundwater. That's why I asked, where is the groundwater and what's the perk rate? We all know the problem that we have. It's no longer a secret, and we have to do everything within our power. And I know within the regulations to get it right. Recently, I listened to a select board meeting, and every single select board member, every one of them, said, no more Title V's in the ground, no more. And now, they don't have a regulation to go by, they're just expressing their feelings, but they all get it. And now it comes back to us. And if this board is to sit and allow another Title V in the ground, when we have the regulatory power to stop that from happening, I'm on board to stop it from happening. And I'll let the other commissioners speak to his request as well.
My only comment is thank you, Drew, for updating us.
Sure.
That's one of my bugaboos. Couldn't have said it better, Mr. Chairman, and it looked as though it was not going to be recommended. If that's been changed and turned on its head, then I'm with you.
Sandy?
With you.
Okay.
Aaron?
Ooh, oh, sorry.
I know you asked, so I'm giving them the opportunity. Aaron, would you like to say anything?
I wanted to ask, do we know anything about when this address is going to be serviced by a sewer?
I believe it's slated for Phase 2 sewering. Yeah, Phase 2, which I can't give you a definitive timeline on when that's happening, but it's at least 6+ years away.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay,
I'd like to request a continuance. That's fine.
okay.
We have the date of March 9th and the time of 6:09 PM.
So I would accept a motion for a continuance to March 9th at 6:09?
6:09, correct.
6:09 PM.
So moved.
Thank you, Aaron. Is there a second to that motion?
Second,
Thank you, Marjorie. Any discussion on the motion that we have on the table for the continuance? Hearing none. Marjorie?
yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
You're going to have to get you your own chair here. The rotating chair.
I'm now calling the 6:09 hearing for Robert S. Durant, trustee, 33 and 37 Horseshoe Bend Way. This is a proposed removal of existing cesspool and an upgrade to a Title V septic system with increase in flow. Representative of Rhode Island's Engineering. This is an RDA. Good evening.
Good evening again, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering. This is the house right to the west of the house we just heard, as well as there is an existing, you'll see Lot 2E and Lot 1E. They are under common ownership, and this proposal tonight assumes that that lot area will be combined for a total of 31,800 square feet. And so we are proposing to go from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom system for this property. Right now, there's no proposed renovations or changes to the dwelling. If that does happen, that'll come back under a notice of intent. This again is a failed cesspool, and they're looking to upgrade the septic system. We did receive, this site does not have the luxury of being able to fit a system outside of 70 feet away from the coastal bank, and we received the same comments from the Board of Health. So this, today, so this project, we would definitely change the design to include an innovative alternative system. And we can continue again, it's the same, owner, same applicant, or if a simple condition that it be included, we accept that as well. But that's the proposal for this project.
Thank you. So it's kind of more of the same, right? We're in the same zone?
Yeah, same resource area, different setback,
Right.
which Mark said that they wouldn't be able to adjust the setback to get out of that 75-foot setback to top of inland bank. So limited, more limited on this lot from that setback.
And did I hear you correctly say that you're willing to put the IA system in for this particular
Correct.
project? Do you have a system in mind?
We would most likely propose a fast system for the.
So would we continue this hearing as well and let you prepare that paperwork?
Yeah, if that's best for the commission, that's fine.
Sure. Okay, then.
So we have March 9th at 6:15, I'm sorry, 6:12 PM.
6:12.
So they'd both be back to back.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd be willing to accept a motion for a continuance to March 9th at 6:12 PM.
So moved.
Thank you, Marjorie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you to the both of you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will take a roll call vote. Marjorie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now calling the 6:12 hearing for Patricia Donnelly and Roger Schiffman for Mute Swan Circle. This is a proposed vista pruning for view corridor. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a notice of intent. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the property owners and applicants for this application and notice of intent for vista pruning. The property is at 4 Mute Swan. It's along the shores of Shoestring Bay. There is currently construction of the dwelling unit, and this is under a prior order of conditions permit. That same order of conditions also permitted a new pier. The house is under construction. It includes a pool on the backyard. The pier is yet to be constructed. That original order of conditions did not include a vista. From the limit of work, which is that dark line that you see towards the left, that kind of jumps out of from the plan, all the way to the edge of the salt marsh, it's all naturally vegetated coastal bank and buffer zones. The resources are land under the ocean, which is Shoestring Bay, land containing shellfish, which is the same water body. There's a salt marsh. There is the land subject to coastal storm flowage, which kind of comes midway up the slope. And then there's the coastal bank, which in this particular property is pretty well defined by the southern end of the steep slope. The vista is being proposed according to the Mashpee protocol for vista pruning, for vista corridors. There is a percentage of 25% along the salt marsh, and then that is reduced to 80% from that 25% along the limit of work. And that's what we're proposing with that. It sort of looks like a rectangle, but it's really a trapezoid. The angle that we are showing is because the preference is from the proposed patio and the second floor master bedroom from the house towards the direction of the proposed pier. The vista pruning is not really a clear cutting of this kind of naturally vegetated area. For those who went to the site, there is really not much undergrowth right now. The shrubbery is really low to the ground. It's just barely a ground cover, but there are a lot of trees. Some of the trees are already dead. So there could be some of these dead trees that will probably need to come down just for the safety of people that are going to eventually access this pier. But the vista pruning is just limbing some of the trees that are within this corridor, not cutting down, not topping them, and then any tall shrubbery, which I didn't see any, to be kept at a certain height. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I'll defer
Do you
to,
have any photos?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question of you, Drew, or maybe Mr. Chairman, you know? What do we do with the Board of Health recommendations here to note the location of the septic system and restrict equipment, traffic, et cetera, over non-load bearing? Does that mean that they're looking for us to put conditions? I'm not clear on what that is.
Well, given the nature of how vista pruning is accomplished, there's
Yeah.
no heavy equipment usage, so that comment is really
It's like
probably
understood that,
not something to worry about. Given the methodology of how vista pruning is performed, there's no heavy tracked equipment, there's no threat to the load bearing over the existing septic system. I would,
typically, it's boilerplate language that
Yeah.
Board of Health
Yep.
it's
inserts just to
boilerplate, right,
protect
right,
the interests of the
Just putting it on
integrity
the
of the
record.
system.
yeah, exactly.
But if I could also add to that, like Drew just said, that's just like a generic note that is put out for many projects.
Yeah.
But this property is on sewer. There is no on-site septic
Oh, right,
system.
sure, yeah.
So there is no concern about H20, H10 septic components because there is no septic on site.
The agent might not have realized. that
that's
it was on
right,
sewer.
yeah.
I have a
Point well
clarifying,
taken.
I have a clarifying question on the 25%. That's 25% within that marked area.
So 25% of the wetland from property line to property line, the wetland being the salt marsh. So the length along the salt marsh, 25% of that.
Okay, so in this trapezoid that you
Yep.
have, not triangle, or rectangle, can you give me an approximate number of trees that you would be taking out?
No
Can I-
trees
can I
taken out.
answer- Can I answer that? There's no removal of trees.
No removal of trees?
No.
He mentioned dead trees that they wanted to take out.
So, yeah, so vista pruning protocols under Regulation 29 allow for up to 10% of removal of snags, which is standing dead wood. 20% of saplings, which are trees that are 5 inches diameter at breast height or less. And then for mature trees, which are above 5 inches in diameter at breast height, 30% of the branches per tree. The way that this is handled through a kind of a boilerplate order of conditions that references directly to Regulation 29, which has all of these percentages clearly laid out in the regulation. We require an on-site and then 3 years of oversight with the contractor to make sure. It's hard to say which trees until you go out there, meet with the contractor, and then you identify, these are the ones that are going to be targeted to achieve the maximum view given the restrictions on pruning. So it's very hard to say the exact number of trees until we actually get out there on the site and get on the same page with the contractor about what is the optimal achievement of pruning and removal for a view, given the restrictions that are already clearly laid out in the regulation.
Yeah, and if I could add, I'm sorry, Erin, I probably won't be able to show you this, but when I mentioned the one tree, it's a dead tree because there's going to be a pier that's being proposed and a set of
Yes.
stairs going down.
I can see that on the plan.
You can
Yep.
see the dead tree on some of the pictures that Drew has, but when I was on the site, this was the one tree. I just want to pass this one along. It's completely dead.
Gotcha.
It's already leaning. And because there's going to be a walkway and a stairs, I'm thinking that's the one tree that would need to, for safety, needs to come down. It's already dead. I know that in some other cases, we have said, or there's been a condition that you can just drop it and let it be because there could be some creatures that would use the dead tree. could be conditioned if it's laying down. But it is a dead tree, and for safety and for the eventual pier and stairs that are going to be built down this coastal bank, it better be addressed now than let it fall either on the stairs or. And it is seen in some of those pictures, but no trees are proposed to be removed except for that one that I point out.
And when we get to the very corner of that area, some of those trees are going to have to be taken out for the pier. Because I'm looking at that, and that corner goes right over the pier. Are there trees there that have to come out for that pier?
So the pier plan that was approved, like I can't remember that application. I think this was pre-COVID.
It was a while back.
I
You're
don't.
younger than I am, so you should remember, but I don't.
I do recall, I mean, so this is a pathway through the naturally vegetated buffer strip that was sited at 4 feet wide, and they did their best to avoid as many trees as possible.
So
It's, yeah,
there wasn't
so,
much cutting there to be.
very minimal, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the conditions. I don't know if there was, because I've seen this before, that the alignment could change if there's a,
Right.
a specimen tree that is worth protecting. I just don't remember. It was probably 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I asked, for the benefit of all the commissioners, we do have some that are relatively new, and I just wanted to have that on the record as to what the 25% rule was and, what kind of cutting would take place and how it would be supervised. Thank you. Any other questions?
So is the 25% part of Regulation 29?
It is.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good, filling in that blank, thank you.
It's a thick binder we have.
Yeah,
I
No,
have it
so
all on
this
my
is my
computer now.
seventh
I don't
pass.
carry the big binder anymore.
I'm going, is that the regulation or the setback? I can't remember.
Any other questions? Questions from those in attendance? Hearing none, I would accept a motion on the notice of intent.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, for Patricia Donnelly, Roger Schiffman, for Mute Swan Circle. I move for a closing issue.
Okay.
No conditions. Right?
I think our
Don't wanna
boilerplate
miss
language
any
takes
of the-
care of the conditions that you might be concerned about. Our agent would be out there to supervise the cutting and tagging the trees and so forth.
And I think there was good background work. Okay, so for closing issue.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion amongst the commissioners for the motion that we have on the table?
Take the damn tree down. You were gonna anyway, right? Yeah.
All set, Aaron?
Yeah, most that thing.
Okay. Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Marjorie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Would you like your picture back?
Is this mine or yours, Beth?
Yeah, thank you. Now calling the 6:15 hearing for Amy Branton, trustee, and John and Maria Rousseau of 90 and 94 Summersea Road. This is for the proposed modifications to an existing pier, ramp, and float. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is a notice of intent.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicants and property owners who are actually in the audience here with us. The project is a modification to an existing and unlicensed pier. Something unusual and kind of good for the environment for this particular pier. This is a shared pier between two abutting residences. We typically don't see those type of piers in town, but it's a good thing that the two neighbors are combining efforts to use just one structure to boat their, or to dock their boats. What has happened at this location, backtracking, the resources are land under the ocean, land containing shellfish. This is Ann's Cove, which is just off of Aquay Bay. There's a salt marsh, there's a coastal bank. The existing pier, what happens is that the float during low tides is grounding out. There is no water. And the two boats for each of the homeowners is just sitting in muck. What we are targeting here is to extend the fixed pier to be able to relocate this float and the boats in greater water depths. We can't really get to water depths of a full 1 foot of water depth at low tide because that will put us in between the two outer piers on the picture that you have from the plan. But we get to a point where we have approximately 0.7 feet to 0.5 feet of water depths at this proposed location. Before we actually made this submission and this complete application, we reviewed this several times with the harbor master. There was some back and forth about navigation concerns because there is a southern pier. On the picture, you see it on the bottom. What we found out is that that license and that permit for that pier is for a non-motorized vessel or watercraft. So when we informed the harbor master on that, at that point, navigation hazard is not a concern for that one pier. So the proposal is to get greater water depth so that the two boats are not grounding during low tides. We're also proposing 4 piles, one on each corner of the proposed float. The reason for that is so that we can put float stops. That keeps the bottom of the plastic buoyancy foam 12 inches above grounding. That would probably only happen within 1 hour, probably 45 minutes either side of low tide. During high tides, they will be floating, but during low tides, it suddenly becomes a fixed pier. So for a period of about 1.5 hours, 2 hours, you're just walking on a fixed pier, and that's the reason for the 4 piles. It is a rather long extension for this fixed pier, but because of the lack of water at this location, we just need to get far enough to get enough depth to make it usable and also protect shellfish, land under the ocean, and so forth. The proposed fixed pier, we're proposing it to be grading instead of decking. That way, light penetration is increased through the system or through the walkway. And the boat are going to be the same boats. There's no proposed changes in watercrafts or the existing boats. It's just a matter of relocating it to have proper water depths. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Raul, you mentioned there was some back and forth discussions about navigation concerns, and you also mentioned that the pier and float to the, was it to the south of this or the north of this, is for non-motorized?
The south.
South.
The
To
one,
south.
yeah.
Okay. I see it now. All right. I was confused. I was just looking at these two up here thinking this is a navigational concern, but it's down there.
Yep.
Okay.
No, if we were to extend the proposed pier further, it may become a navigation concern to the pier to the northeast.
I can see that, and you'd only pick up 1/10 of a foot anyways.
Right.
I mean, you're
For
not getting
1
the-
inch, you don't want to build a structure another 50 feet to gain another inch of water depth. Or
Yeah,
2
I mean, you're
inches.
coming out quite a ways for very little gain to begin with.
Well, we're going from no water at low water
Right.
to gaining about 5 inches. 5 inches to about 8 inches.
Okay. Not that this is within our purview, but I'm going to ask anyways. I agree. I think it's a wonderful idea of people sharing resources and less impact on the environment. What happens if one of the owners leaves? Is there some type of a written agreement that this stays in place?
Yes, there is an agreement between the two property owners that this is a shared pier, and they share the cost on everything, on the maintenance, on this permit that we're doing right now. This doesn't stop with this commission. This requires state permitting, and they share all those costs that are required. And there is a written and recorded agreement between the neighbors
It's recorded in the registry?
in registry, yes.
So that's incumbent upon any successive buyer. They have to
Right,
be told that ahead of time, and if they don't agree, then they can't buy.
right. It's tied to the deeds.
Okay. It's so unusual, that's why I'm asking these questions. Again, it's not
Right, and it's
not
a good thing.
conservation purview, but I'm just curious for my own knowledge. Questions from the commissioners?
Can I ask you about the objection? Looks like there's an objection from an abutter? Yes?
There is a letter to be
Yeah,
read. and-
yes, yeah.
And I was going to do that once.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was just my question.
When I go to questions from the audience, I was going to read that letter.
Do it, I defer
You
to
have
you.
that, true.
Yeah?
Correct. I don't have a copy of it, but. Any other questions on the project itself? Aaron?
Nope, thank you, I'm good.
Typically, we see mitigation for a shellfish assessed fee, and I know that's not the case here. And we're looking at how many piles? 8 and 4?
We have
2, 4, 6, 8. 8 and 4, correct?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. 6 pairs.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Sorry. So what is the calculated mitigation for these 12 piers? And where is that going to go?
So the Shellfish Constable did submitted a letter saying that this cove is not shellfish habitable
Right.
and did not recommend a fee. I know that there's been fees applied before, but any suggestion, we'll happy to hear them.
Well, I guess I would direct my question to you, Drew, on this. Are we entitled to mitigation for those 12? Your 10-inch,
So there's no defined formula when it comes to, so was it already stated that the Shellfish Constable did not recommend a shellfish mitigation fee? That's in the comments. They don't recommend a shellfish mitigation fee because the area is just unsuitable habitat for shellfish. So then it moves to the possibility of upland out-of-water mitigation. So we don't have any formula predicated on piles as it relates to upland mitigation, so it's really discretionary amongst the commissioners. I'll defer to Dan, because Dan's been out to the site. He can go over what he believes would be an appropriate mitigation based on site conditions.
In front of 94 Summersea on the timber wall, there seems to be some clearing that, I don't know if that was done by whatnot, but there's no vegetation. When you look at the picture on the pier, when you're looking at the land, on the right, you can see that the vegetation is very thick, and on the left, you can see, while there's a boat, that shouldn't be there, but also there's no vegetation on the ground. On the map as well, on your blueprint, it does actually state the edge of clear. So I didn't know if that was the edge of the clearing where the trees start coming back, or what that was on the blueprint, the top there. It says edge of clear. I didn't know if that was indicating that bank in front of the timber wall was cleared or whatnot. But nonetheless, the mitigation could be for that section there, just to revegetate it with whatever natives are available. And that could be met with the homeowners. One of the agents can go just be with the homeowner, come up with a plan, and then come up with a schedule from there.
Okay. So just for my own information, how much mitigation are we talking about? Good-sized bush for each pier?
I think instead of like drawing a comparison to the pier footprint or piles, we look at the area that has the most opportunity to be filled in closest to the resource area. And that
Okay.
would dictate how much square footage and how many species spacing, that sort of thing, which what Dan would say would require a site visit, with the consultant to determine what area is most suitable, and then that would determine how much square footage
Okay.
to be able to fill
And
in.
that would be a condition that we would
That
tack
you
on?
could put in, yeah.
Yeah, that would be under the mitigation
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you have that letter, Drew?
I do, yeah. The other one is on my phone.
Okay. It's a short one. Okay, I'm going to,
Oh, sorry.
there's a letter from the abutter, Burton Liebman, has requested his letter to be read into the record. This letter is dated February 21, 2023. Burton Liebman, 86 Summersea Road, Mashpee, Mass., to the Conservation Committee. As the owner of lots 80 and 86 on Ann's Cove, I object to the plans for building a pier into Oxway Bay. The cove is already a disaster. Please don't make it worse. Also, the intended pier will transverse my property line. Yours truly, Burton Liebman.
Which lot is that?
This is
That's the one
80
with
and 86. He's the owner of lots 80 and 86 on Ann's Cove.
So it has
This-
that dock with the non-motorized.
This right here.
It's the
Marjorie,
Can you
non-motorized one?
point to it again?
Right here,
Because I can't find it.
right here. See where the
That
cursor's
one.
circling?
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Mr. Liebman's dock. That's the one that's restricted to no motorized boats.
Ah.
This, so that's, when he's saying it's crossing property lines, this dashed line
Yeah,
that you see projecting out from the property line, that's what's called a riparian line. So it's not, the solid line is his actual property line that divides his property from the subject property here. The riparian is just a projection of that property line out into the water, and it's used to determine, any potential impact setbacks for navigational purposes between docks. That's why you see this dashed line coming out right here. So when he says it's going across my property, this is what he means, this section.
it's,
That
yeah.
dotted line.
Just to clarify, it's not coming across his property upland, it's over the water.
Drew, I noticed that projected line is coming right off of his float, the left-hand side.
Yeah, Raul, you want to clarify?
But
Yes.
it's not coming off of his true
It
property. line.
varies. Raul can explain.
So yeah, Drew, if you could zoom out a little bit to see where that dashed line ends up at. So that projected line, it goes from one pier to the other one. What we did that for is to show the harbor master. When we were projecting the pier beyond that line, he was saying that because we crossed that line, which is different than the projected property line, it was just to show navigation concerns.
Right.
So when the harbor master saw that we were projecting beyond that line, he was saying that will be a navigation hazard between the lines of adjacent piers. But once that pier was found not to be permitted for motorized watercraft, then that concern was no longer. So that line is not the projected property line extension. The projected property line extension is the other dashed line. What happens in a cove, in a curved shoreline, the projected property line is not a straight projection of the existing property lines on land. It kind of bisects the shoreline angles. This may become too technical, but it's the other two little dashed lines that kind of connect in a triangle. It goes through the middle of the pier for the applicant, and it bisects the other projected line. Now, none of these properties have ownership of the cove. That is land of the state. So
Right.
nobody's crossing any property lines here. If the state allows a license and a permit for somebody to build a commercial marina here, it could be built in front of everybody's property if the state allows it and permits it. And of course, if this board also reviews it properly. So this is not a matter of property line crossing, but those projected property lines are shown for the state to see how far you could be for what they could potentially allow waterfront property owners to use for water recreation. That neighbor to the south would also have a similar triangle usable sort of projected lines that would turn into a pizza-shaped triangle piece. And it doesn't mean that they're not allowed to go beyond. It just means that you're kind of going into an area that is better suited for someone else or whatever. But that is not the case for this project. The reason that we're doing this angle, not just because of we're getting to the deeper water faster, it's also to provide a setback to that projected property line from the abutter to the south. But no, we are not crossing property lines or projected property lines in this case.
I'm guessing, though, sort of like as the crow flies, that the abutter currently comes off of his or her deck and goes straight across that dotted line you're talking about, that looks like the property extension, but it's not. But
Right, but at this
But
point.
if he was, just hear my point. I don't know that there's legal grounds, but right now, he can just go straight across to two neighbors down to their.
Right, and they could, and they have the
Now
right.
he's saying, oh, now I have to go all the way around, and he's losing this part of navigability, that's all.
Right, and they could. In fact, in kayaks, you can actually kayak underneath the piers of your bordering property neighbors. That is not prohibited.
Yeah.
So they could do that, and they can continue to do so.
I can see his annoyance, though.
So Raul, let's go back to the curvature of that property line
Yes.
extension. Why are the two property line extensions for the properties that we're hearing, why aren't those curved?
Oh, the lines don't curve. The lines itself don't curve. It's just that the shoreline curves.
So you're
So you
adjusting for that bend to the
bisect
shoreline.
that curve
All right,
with a straight line. That's why the three
I get it now.
property
Okay.
lines that we have are just for the two properties that we have.
Okay. All right. Other questions for those, from those that are in attendance?
I do have another letter.
Oh, there's another
Yeah,
letter?
sorry, I didn't print it out, so it's on my phone.
Sure.
If the phone goes dark, you just press the screen again. It's the
Okay.
battery
Is it a
saving.
different abutter?
Yeah, this is.
Same
the-
abutter.
Same abutter?
It's the same abutter, it's his lawyer
Ah,
who presented
Okay.
this. Yeah.
So let me get this one straight. This is dated February 23rd, 2023. It's addressed to the Mashpee Conservation Commission with our proper address on it, referring to the notice of intent for 90 and 94 Summer Sea Road. Members of the commission, this letter is written on behalf of the Babs Realty Trust, in parentheses, trust, who is the owner of the adjacent property located at 86 Summer Sea Road. Specifically concerns the trust objects to the proposal to construct an addition to the pier and floats at 90 and 94 Summer Sea for the reason that there is no reasonable justification to construct a 93-foot extension to the existing pier and float system. That is, the proposed pier addition is located in a small cove known as Ann's Cove in Aquay Bay. Currently, each property in the cove is serviced by a small pier and float system, which generally serve 2 properties and project 30 or so feet into the cove. Here, the applicant has proposed a 93-foot pier, which will dominate the water sheet within the cove. While the proposal will result in a minor improvement of the depth of water at the float, 0.4 feet MLW existing to 0.6 feet MLW proposed. The proposal will require the installation of 8 new 10-inch piles, eliminate forever that existing land under the ocean. Further, and as noted before, it will dominate the cove and limit navigational and recreational use of Ann's Cove by other members of the public. In summary, there is no justification to allow a single property owner to appropriate the public waterway for their exclusive use. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Respectfully, Paul Revere III. That's in the record. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can answer to that, there is a major improvement and a major wetland and environmental benefit for this project. Taking the existing float and the 2 boats from grounding at every low tide cycle to a place where we can avoid that, it is a major improvement, both for the environment, both for the use of the 2 property owners. Also, having that this is 1 pier shared by 2 property owners, it's major in comparison to the typical projects that you see. The 1 pier that you see here to the far left, that recently, I believe it was within the past 2 years, that recently got extended. And the whole purpose is that water depths along the shore is being lost. There's the accumulation of muck. And the boats that have been permitted to be docking on these locations are now grounding out. So it is a vast improvement. Now, taking ownership of whatever, someone else has had rights on this water, this is not happening here. Nobody's owning this water. There is still ample room for whoever's using that southern pier with kayaks or canoes to continue to do so. There is plenty of water to navigate outside of the existing dock to the south over to the main Aquay Bay and eventually to Papanessa Bay, so if that's where they're heading. So this, I cannot see that this is not an improvement. I think this is a major improvement. And for those reasons, I think this board should approve this project and we can take it over to the state for a licensing. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions from the public that's here? I'll accept a motion if there is one.
Well, I just have one question.
Sure.
That I'd be happy to make a motion. It's, Drew, in your recommendations, yeah, are we, the condition of an on-site references a condition that we could put on this, right? Or close an issue with condition of an on-site at 94 Summersea with consultant and homeowner to assess the area for mitigation plans, which hasn't been mentioned yet.
It has been, actually.
Did I
was
miss
mentioned
it?
at the beginning, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, for heaven's sake. My bad, sorry. I was still
Safely
worried.
sorry.
Yeah,
It's
You
fine.
know, I was still worried about the abutter and just
It's fine.
yeah.
being his sense of loss of navigability there. But I just want to make sure that I understand that. So apologies, but the mitigation plantings, are you happy, content with that as a condition, just that they be there on site while they're doing all of this?
So my recommendation is that there be an onsite to determine the appropriate location and amount of mitigation as compensation for the disturbance to the aquatic environment. So as far as how much mitigation, where it's going, the square footage, my recommendation is a condition to allow that to be determined by virtue of an onsite.
And happy with just that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, then, Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, I will make a motion to close an issue with condition of an onsite at 94 Summersea with consultant and homeowner to assess the area for mitigation plantings for Amy Branton, trustee, and John and Maria Russo, 90 and 94 Summersea, NOI.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. So we have a motion that's made and seconded to close an issue. It's now open for discussion amongst the commissioners. Any discussion? Aaron, do you have anything you want to add, or?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay. Sandy, all set? Marjorie?
All set.
I'll make a comment before we vote. Regulation 27 is really what governs this, and it really is the newest revised regulation that we have. I'm looking at it. It was promulgated on April 28th of 2022. It's not even a year old. And not that the bylaw subcommittee can anticipate every single issue that's out there. I remember working on this regulation, and we went through an awful lot of discussion and back and forth voting, and we tried to put this regulation in the best possible shape. And this proposal meets everything that's in that regulation.
That's good news.
So, and I know there's a few complaints. I mean, whether they're justified or not, it does meet the regulation. And that's all I have to say in the discussion. Okay, so I'll call for a vote. Marjorie?
Yes.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Once again, nicely done.
Thank you.
Drew, was that the discussion about the trees? Was that all in the same? I just want, the trees.
Before that, yeah.
I love that. My goal is to be able to type. That's my goal. My goal.
You're working.
It's a good goal. It's laudable.
Now calling the 6:18 hearing for Mark R. and Robin L. Galante, 164 Captain's Row. This is for a proposed two-story addition to an existing dwelling. Representative is J.E. Landers and Cawley, P.E. This hearing is being continued from October 27th, 2022, November 10th, 2022, and February 9th, 2023. This is an amended order of conditions. Do we have, I guess we don't have anyone appearing. There has been a request for this hearing to be continued to March 23rd at 6:03, pending a landscape plan from Landscape Architect.
Can I just ask you a question? It was follow-up, Alex, at our last meeting question. It was a different property, but how many times you can go to the continuance apple and take
Yes.
another bite?
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please do.
So the reason for this continuance is directly related to a condition the commission made at the last meeting. So
That's good news.
I recommend that you grant the continuance because it was born out of your own directive,
I think that's.
even though it's number 4.
I know, I just wanted to know if we had a sense as a commission.
Yeah.
if there, I thought there was validity to what Alex said.
But in this is special circumstance.
And this is a special circumstance. Good to know. All right.
We did agree after three strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
And in some of these cases, there are people that have just asked for continuances, failed to even show up, failed to be in touch with us, and it just goes on and on and on.
But that's not the case.
That's not the case here.
Okay.
So I will entertain a motion for the requested continuance to March 23rd at 6:03.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. I'll open the motion up for any further discussion amongst the commissioners before I call for a vote. Anything? Anyone? No? Okay. Marjorie?
Yes.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes as well. Motion carries. Do you want this letter back?
Sure.
For your records? Okay. Now calling the 621 hearing for Brendan P. Giblin, 90 Pompanesett Island Road. This is for proposed demolition of existing dwelling and appurtenances, construction and maintenance of a new single-family dwelling, garage with a pile-supported guest suite above, in-ground swimming pool, fencing, pool cover enclosure, new patios, landscaping, hardscaping, and Title V IA septic upgrade. Representative Cape and Islands Engineering. This is continued from January 12th, 2023, and January 26th, 2023, as well as February 9th, 2023. It's a notice of intent.
And good evening again, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering. We also have Lauren Taylor from Crawford Land Management, and the homeowner, Brendan Giblin, is also in attendance. So to give you an update from last hearing, first item is we did apply to the ZBA, and we are slated for the March 22 hearing with the ZBA. So that application has been submitted. That had not been done last time we spoke, so. We also made a couple plan revisions that I'll go over, and as well, we responded to comments from the commission at the last hearing. So to summarize the plan revisions, we did reduce the pool by another 4 feet from the total length of the pool on the end closest to the water, the end of the pool in the velocity zone. We reduced the pool as well as identified that the pool equipment will be outside of the velocity zone in the AE flood zone and will also be at or above the base flood elevation for the project. The other thing I did at the request of the commission, we were asked how the project complies with the Regulation 25, which is the regulation related to work in the floodplain. I basically summarized that regulation along with a response to each section within that regulation and how the project either complies with the regulation, if it didn't, if it doesn't comply, or how it, and then on top of it, how we feel that the project is actually a benefit in relation to protecting the land subject to coastal storm flowage. And I submitted that document. It's quite a long document. What I'm going to do is just go over some highlights from that. So there's a portion of that document talking about the structures that exist in the land subject to coastal storm flowage and the structures proposed. There's portions of the house and deck, particularly the deck structure, that are in the velocity zone now. There's portions of the existing dwelling with habitable living space below the flood elevation, below the base flood elevation, and as well as there's significant existing utilized area of landscape or land subject to coastal storm flowage and buffer zone, the 0 to 50-foot buffer zone. And the proposed design brings all the structures on the site up to current floodplain and flood zone regulations, particularly the garage that is partially in the VE zone as well as the A zone. The entire site is in the AE zone. Brings that structure will be on piles and will be per code. There will be no habitable living space below flood elevation of that for that structure. The existing house as well, or the proposed house, will also no longer have habitable living space below the base flood elevation, and will meet all today's current flood zone regulations, creating a much more flood resilient property. You know, the existing home could be very susceptible to floods at this point. As well as the pool is a saltwater treated pool. The equipment is no longer in the floodplain. It's elevated above the floodplain, so essentially it's just water and the pool border. It causes no risk to the flood zone and the flood environment. Another big portion of Regulation 25 is the buffer zones. There's a very clear section that requires 20% of the existing width of the area of the site that's in land subject to coastal storm flowage, at least a minimum of that to be vegetated. We're given this site, that distance is approximately 24 feet. We're improving that all the way up to about a 45-foot width for the property. Instead of 20%, a minimum 20%, we're increasing that width up to about 37%. We've also, we're restoring the 0 to 50-foot buffer. Right now, there's only about 48% of it natural. We're getting all the way up to 80%. That darker green area on the plan is all restored 0 to 50-foot buffer. There's essentially no disturbed areas all the way in the 0 to 45. It's that last 5-foot strip that still has some structure in it. And then we're also restoring almost 3,000 square feet of land subject to coastal storm flowage, where the new area of natural disturbance of land subject to coastal storm flowage is only about 1,000 square feet. So we're actually restoring almost 3 to 1 more than we're working in. And then just overall, since the entire lot is in land subject to coastal storm flowage, just overall, the existing disturbed area of the lot, or the existing naturally vegetated area of the lot, is about 43%. After this project, it's all the way up to about 55%. So we feel that through the review of that regulation, we're still, even though are components of the site, you know, it's clearly on the plan within land subject coastal storm flowage, and both in the AE and VE zone, that it's still a significant improvement with all the vegetated areas, the flood resilient design, and again, we've also, from when we submitted, we've significantly reduced the area of work along the southerly portion of the project. You know, based on those components and my review of that regulation, we feel we do meet the intent of Regulation 25 for this project. That ends my project update, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, Mark. On the plan, it says that the proposed new disturbance in land subject to coastal storm flowage is 3,398 square feet. At the top under project statistics.
I'm gonna get my full-size set out here. A second. Let's see a little bit better. Yep, okay.
So that's new disturbance. So am I reading this wrong in thinking that there's other disturbances here as well? Or is that the total disturbance for the entire project, 3398?
That is new disturbance, not including like the existing house footprint, you know, existing structure footprint.
So what is the total disturbance?
That is existing house disturbance. The existing structure in the zoning table is 1274. So 1274 plus 3398. It's roughly 4,600 square feet.
4,600,
Yes.
okay. All right, I got some other dimensional questions because I can't quite assess them from the plan. I'm hoping you can help me out. When I'm looking at the garage, it's stated that it's on pilings. I get that. You've moved the mechanicals for the pool into that area, which gets it out of the velocity zone. That's a good move. But it does say on the plan that the floor of the garage is a slab, and its elevation is 6.60, where that hypothetical vehicle is parked. So that's all concrete.
Correct.
Okay. So what I'm looking at is that slab, this small white area between the proposed pool and the garage itself where it says 4.8.
Yep. Okay.
What is that surface?
I believe that's a patio-type paver surface.
Patio paver, okay. And then what I'm doing is I'm following the border of the velocity zone.
Okay.
And then there's that portion of the pool, I see you've reduced that, so there's less of the pool in the velocity zone, but nevertheless, there's part of that swimming pool in the velocity zone. And then I come up further where it says 4.80, and those are clearly patio pavers, I mean, they're drawn that way. And then there's the, I assume from the presentation, it's a freestanding deck. So how many support columns are in that freestanding deck? And what are the sizes of those columns?
To be honest, I don't have the architectural structural details right now, but I do know, correct, that it's designed to be a freestanding engineered structure, you know, separate from the house, but I could definitely get those structural details and make them available.
Well, here's where I'm coming from. From the plan, I can't assess the square footage of impermeable surfaces that you're proposing here. The slab, the portion of the slab of the garage floor that's in the velocity zone, the portion of that small walkway that you state is going to be some type of a paver, the exact portion, square footage of the pool, the pavers, and whatever number of columns that are there. What I'm trying to figure out is the total square footage of the surface of the velocity zone that you're covering up with an impermeable device of one kind or another. Because as I said at the last meeting, I asked you to make me feel comfortable with what's going into the velocity zone. So I've given this a lot of thought over the last 2 weeks, and I've seen this plan, and I've been looking at it now for several days, and I'm still not comfortable with whatever square footage is being presented that is basically sealing off the capability of the velocity zone to absorb flood waters. And when I look at Regulation 25 that we spoke about at the last hearing, and I now go back and I look at Regulation 24, which defines things that you've put right into this letter that you've given us, cumulative effects. I mean, these are permanent structures. They're going to be there for more than a couple of weeks. And so there is no argument that there's a cumulative effect to the impermeable surfaces that you're placing into that velocity zone. And then I look further in Regulation 24, and it talks about flood control, the ability of wetlands to absorb, store, and slowly release floodwaters. This proposal, in my view, is taking that ability away. And again, I'm not comfortable with that. This is the velocity zone. This is the very first place water is going to come. And the burden of proof, according to our wetlands bylaw, is on you to convince me that these structures aren't going to prevent that absorption. And moreover than that, they're not going to prevent that storm water that could possibly come in, well, most likely will come in at some point, from being diverted somewhere else. And my question to you is, where is it being diverted to? These are things that, you might not believe this, I wake up in the morning and I think, wait a minute, what's this? How does that work? And I'm not quite, I mean, it's a big project, and I want to make sure it's right before I vote for it. And right now, I'm not convinced that it's right. So if you could shed some light on the total square footage, and, you know, how much are you really taking away? I know that the mitigation plan is phenomenal. It's probably the best one I've ever seen since I've been on the commission. But I'm not convinced that mitigation is going to offset whatever absorption characteristics that you're taking away from that velocity zone. That's why I wanted that square footage, so I could start to do some comparisons about what are we really losing for storage capacity, and what are we really gaining for the proposed mitigation, and is it sufficient? I'm not convinced that it is.
For now, I just have a quick response. Definitely, we can itemize and create tally up these square footage and areas. I think what I also plan to do is also analyze, when you take bare spots, grass spots, and turn them into naturally vegetated area. Anytime we analyze drainage or things like that, things have different permeability values or curve numbers, they call it, when you're designing drainage. So like a wooded area can handle an absorbed runoff much better than grass, than dirt, than concrete slabs, So I think what I'm also going to do.
Don't do a very good job at all.
What I'm also going to do, yes, is I can continue to analyze the project as a whole, and hopefully make you feel comfortable with this project. So
I'm only one vote. There are 3 other commissioners that I'm sure want to ask questions or comment as well, but those are foremost in my concerns. And to be honest, I'm happy the pool's been reduced, but I'm still not comfortable with what's before me. But they may be, I don't know. So I'll ask other commissioners if they want to ask questions or comment on what we have before us.
Well, my questions are much more intra than extra. So whether or not, this is a very complicated project, obviously, and we've seen it a few times. And I do think there's been really good work done to answer some of the concerns. But at the same time, there's also, that's a big area, and there's a lot of concerns that you have that are very legit. So the question is there a way for this project to move forward with conditions? I don't like conditions any more than anybody else does, but it's better, I think, than a stoppage unless there's really egregious violations or errors by omission or commission. So are there a series of conditions that would make you more comfortable with the current situation and the changes that they have made? Or a list of changes that you would like to see made again?
You don't have to appease me. I'm stating my opinion.
Well, I sort of do in this sense, for the public, for the homeowners, and for all of us. I think that, for me, as a commissioner, the ideal way forward is to make sure that all of these different issues have been considered, and you have a better handle on some of them with the historic values that I think are valid. So, and I'm a new commissioner, you know, so I lean perhaps more heavily. I make a really good citizen. So, I'm wondering, though, I like the idea, too, of working together and coming up with something that works for all parties. That's why I asked.
Well, my motivation is that it meet what the regulations are calling for.
Yeah.
And I'm not comfortable that it does. I see a loss of the absorption factor.
Yeah, I can hear
I see a
that.
missing figure of square footage that's being covered with impermeable surfaces. I've got some concerns, and until those concerns are satisfied, I'm not comfortable with the project. But again, you guys have just as much say as I do.
So Drew, your comments are, leave a little room there between what we should do with this particular proposal and what we could add on to at least have some recognition of the work that's been done as a, you know, progressive step. And then,
Yeah, I mean, my take is that I completely understand Paul's request for additional kind of crunching of numbers and information to make an informed decision, so I have no issue with that. And if that warrants a continuance, then so be it. I think that, I mean, my own personal take on the impacts of the flood zone is that, I mean, obviously, there are going to be some impacts, whether they're cumulative or not, and to the degree of which they're going to impact naturally vegetated areas in the flood zone outside of this property, given the level of development on Pompanesett Island.
Yeah.
I'm not so convinced that it's cumulative impact to wetland standards, certainly to other private properties, but when you're dealing with such a heavily developed area like Pompanesett Island, I think that's a given no matter what you're doing on any property in terms of modification, raise and replace, landscaping, hardscaping. You're going to be altering topography, and you're going to be altering flood zone patterns. To the degree of which you're doing that, that results in cumulative impact is questionable, given the existing conditions on Pompanesett Island. It's not virgin woods. It's almost entirely developed. But I don't say that to dismiss Paul's concerns. I agree that there should be more information to make an informed decision. I do believe that, as Paul had stated already, that the mitigation plan is fantastic, and I do believe it will be enough to offset the impacts, but, you know, that's speculation.
yeah.
How well is it going to be maintained and, you know, grow and become robust to the point where you can firmly say, yes, this is going to offset the impacts to storm surges. A big enough storm surge is going to impact everything on the island, regardless of what happens
Tell
here.
me about it.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from is, you know. So as far as, you know, I still maintain my comments as they are, but I completely understand the request for additional information.
Anything further, Marjorie?
I'm sorry?
Anything further for questions, or
No.
Sandy?
No, I'm with you. I think we need more information.
Aaron?
Alex asked last time about shifting the pool, and there was something about a setback problem. Is that what it?
Yeah, I think it was
Could
setback
be
from the
moved
road.
further?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to meet the 40-foot setback, similar to the garage and the house and pool.
40-foot setback from the road, and same thing with the garage.
Correct.
And that's as close as it can possibly be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the pool is structure, that's what, the pool is subject to the setback, not the patio, because the patio isn't considered structure under the building code, but the pool is. Obviously, the garage too, but, so. They can have patio closer to the road, but not the pool.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners before I ask those in the audience? Anybody from the public that would like to question or comment? Hearing none, anything further, Drew, that you'd like to add?
Only that the Board of Health comments, road and inspection required with abatement if necessary, design plans for new IA system to be reviewed upon submission to the Board of Health. Any system failing to meet a 75-foot setback from surface waters, freshwater or coastal wetlands bordering vegetated wetlands, salt marshes, inland or coastal bank, or other resource areas as defined in the Mashpee Board of Health Regulations in Chapter 172 of the Mashpee Codes shall specify the installation of an alternative septic system with a disinfection unit for the effluent prior to discharge to the leaching facility. So I don't know if that was part of the IA design, but that is going to be required as that secondary UV treatment for effluent because of the variance they're going to have to grant from the 75-foot setback to those resource areas, so. Floor plans to be reviewed upon submission to the building department. Building commissioner proposal needs relief from ZBA, and that has been stated to go before the ZBA on March 22nd. No other comments?
That's it. Thank you. Okay, so with no further discussion, I'm going to go back to Mark for just a second. Are you willing to continue this to provide that additional information, or would you like me to just ask for a motion?
Yeah, we'd like to request a continuance.
Okay,
So this
we have a date?
continuance date would be March 9th at 6:15 PM.
March 9th, 6:15. Okay. Is there a motion to continue the hearing to March 9th at 6:15 PM?
So moved.
Thank you, Marjorie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Discussion of the motion for the continuance?
Oh, I would just like to thank the representative. That makes it a lot easier for all of us to hear all the information. And are you clear of all of the
Yep.
information that everybody wants?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing, just
Yeah.
so that, so you're going to be capable of getting the square footage of impermeable surfaces
Correct.
and be able to abide by what we're
Correct.
asking for.
Yep.
Great. No further discussion. I will call for a vote. Marjorie?
Yes.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
We just need a few more of the continuance strikes. Again. Not for lack of effort,
T-shirts,
yeah.
you know, bumper stickers.
If you talk, you show you talk, it starts back to zero.
You want to get it right.
This one. Yeah, and I walked the property. So, it's a beautiful piece of
All right, don't relax, because we still have more fun.
We still have more fun to do.
Yes, we have a lot more. Now calling the 6:24 hearing for Daniel D. McMacken and Lauren W. Morris of 14 Grand Vista. This is proposed modification to existing landscaping and hardscaping. Representative Baxter Nye Engineering and Surveying. This is continued from February 9th, 2023. It's an amended order of conditions. And I have on my sheet a request to continue. You're shaking your head no?
He's not part of this application.
For 106.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
he's the next
sorry.
one.
So I have a request for this to be continued to March 9th at 6:06 because of a scheduling conflict. And that would be the second continuance, so we're fine with that. I think we are, if I get a motion for it.
Yeah. Happy to so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion to continue? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Marjorie?
Yes, sir.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes as well. So that will be continued on March 9th. Give me a second here. 27th. Okay. Now calling the 6:27 hearing for Anthony and Meredith Stern, 106 Captain's Row. This is a proposed removal of an existing cesspool and upgrade to Title V septic system. The representative is GeoCape Environmental Consultants. This is an RDA. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
You look familiar,
Yes, I've been here before,
very familiar.
once or twice.
Welcome back. Could I have your name, although for the record?
Glenn Harrington, representing the Stearns and the proposed work at 106 Captain's Row. So the property is a 4-bedroom dwelling that directly abuts Shoestring Bay. There is a velocity zone that comes up to an existing seawall and a coastal bank, and the remainder of the property is in Zone X, 0.2% annual flood chance. And the proposed work is merely just a replacement of the septic tank to replace an existing cesspool that was identified during the Title V transfer inspection. And the tank and a distribution box are proposed to replace the existing cesspool. There is a leach pit there, a 1,000-gallon leach pit, which was inspected and passed inspection. And so that is, at this point, proposed to remain in service. And when the septic inspection was done, the Board of Health was contacted by the septic inspector to find out or to make a recommendation as far as what had to be done. And at that point, the Board of Health told them to propose a septic tank and distribution box, which is how the transfer then occurred. And so there were contingencies for the transfer for the work for the tank and the distribution box to be installed. At that point, they contacted me to do the plan for the installation of the tank and the D-box. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. I know from looking at the paperwork that the leach field is staying, it's fully functional, there's no problems with that, and it's just a cesspool out, tank in.
Yes.
But I'm curious as to what is the groundwater elevation in this area? I know it's not on the plan, and nor should it be, because you're not proposing a leach field.
Right.
But I would like to have that information, just so that I know if a standard Title V goes in, what are we really dealing with as far as length of time that effluent is going to move down through those soils and make contact with groundwater? You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
I would feel much more comfortable if this were an IA system proposal. And especially in light of the fact that this property is not in Phase 1 of the proposed wastewater treatment collection. In fact, if you want to stay, we're going to have a public hearing on Regulation 30 that we're bringing back. And this really if Regulation 30 was in place, this wouldn't fly. So I've got a lot of questions and concerns.
As far as the groundwater, I would say that groundwater is around elevation 1, NEBD.
close,
And the bottom of the leach pit, I do show on the site plan at about elevation 13. And that's information taken from the septic inspection that the Grassies did when they did their property transfer inspection. For depth below grade and then depth of the bottom of the leach pit from grade. So that's why I showed it on the profile like that.
Okay.
So just from my own knowledge, the groundwater's around elevation 1. So so that means that there's 12 feet from the bottom of the leach pit, and the Board of Health has a regulation that if they don't have 4 feet below the SAS to groundwater, then it's an automatic fail. So in this case, this leaching pit had the required separation to groundwater. That's why it passed, and it didn't have any other evidence of failure.
Right.
So at this point, that's why this is just basically a single component replacement. And on the denitrification and the alternative system, being where I was, I've fully made the owner aware of both the DEP regulations that are coming, and also Drew sent me comments to say that, you know, alternative systems are certainly warranted for this area. Absolutely, and because of the degraded water quality for shoestring and many other water bodies. But, so that the owner has been put on notice that, and in the first conversation that I had with the owner, where he's a new owner, and because of these contingencies, they just like to have this work done. And they have not even been in the house yet. So they are new owners, and they would like to figure out what their uses and what their future uses of the property will be. And in his first breath, he said, you know, we may do a tear down rebuild. And so I think at that point, it doesn't make any sense for them to do a full rehab of a dwelling and not put a new septic system in. Because at that point, if there is new DEP regulations that come out, or your regulation by that point, they'll be doing a D-night. He fully understands that and would fully comply with that. So those conversations have been had.
And he was not willing to go that route now? I mean, we can work around
Not at this point, because the way that the sale went and the contingencies, just to get this work done, they'd like to have this work done, get in the door, and figure out what they're going to do with the property. And at that point, should they do the tear down, which sounded like they were going to move forward with, but they wanted to get in the house and figure that out. And I don't know where the sewer project is at this point, because at that point, if they can connect a sewer, that would certainly be the better option. I just don't know how far out that is right now, because phase 2, I don't think is the same phase 2 when I was here.
No,
You know, it changes daily. And
There
who
were
knows if
5 steps to phase 2 before, and I
Who
don't,
knows if we'll ever get to it, too? That's
Right.
another issue.
right.
Well, I'll be perfectly blunt with you. I'm the guy that always asks for IAs, so I'd be remiss not to, especially when it's a stone's throw from the water.
Yep.
I get the fact that you've got a ton of separation from that leach field
Yep.
and the groundwater, but we both know it's going to get in that groundwater.
Yeah, the nitrogen
At 2 minutes an inch, it's there.
doesn't come out. Yeah.
So my concerns is the protection of that groundwater. So I have a hard time with this proposal not being
Yeah.
an IA system.
Yeah.
Other commissioners that would have questions or comments?
I feel exactly the same way. It just seems like the board saying something really nice about the Board of Selectmen is taking a solid stand that I'm envious of. And I know you in your heart of hearts are as well. It just seems like we keep kicking it down the can, but I don't know right here with this before us what our options are. They're meeting the standards, and I feel a sense of frustration. I'm frustrated that if it's meeting all the standards, it's something the commission I've been reminded time and again, does not have the authority to require it at this point, although I'd like to, so I'm just not quite certain. Why can't you just go back and ask the homeowner to just do it?
They've been asked.
I know. I'm being facetious and just nasty because I think it's a hard.
No, it's frustrating.
It's a very hard place to be, to do the right thing and to be challenged by the constituency out there that says, well, why did you put that through? You said you were in favor of the IAs and everything else. So I turn to you, Drew. It's on you now. Because, but you've recommended that we go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, based on there's no increase in living space, and this is updating an existing cesspool, that I would consider it to be beneficial in nature. Not as beneficial as an IA system,
Not as
obviously.
good, but it's better than what it is. of
Also,
course.
it is worth noting that the existing leach pit is outside the 100-foot zone of
Yeah, so
jurisdiction
that's
from the
good.
top of coastal bank, so it's not jurisdictional where the leach pit is. So that is something to be taken into consideration.
Sandy, any questions or comments?
No.
Aaron, do you have any questions or comments for Glenn?
I don't have any questions. I echo your concerns about not putting an IA system in here. As you know, I look out over Shoesting Bay every morning, and I would like to see new homeowners take a progressive stance towards this and put in an IA system. But as you say, they're meeting the standards, so it is what it is.
Anyone in the audience that would like to comment or question? Nothing, Alex? You're all set. Anything further, Drew, you'd like to add? Okay. I'll close in saying again that I have a hard time, I mean, the tank is jurisdictional, and I have a very difficult time going along with the idea that another Title V is going to go into the ground. It may meet the regulations, but it doesn't meet the intent of why we're all sitting here. You know, ultimately, you look at many regulations, protection of groundwater, protection of groundwater, protection of groundwater. And when there's an alternative available to us to protect that groundwater better than what's presently being proposed, I just feel that we should go with that alternative. You know, hopefully the client would agree, I don't know. But at this point, we don't have an agreement. We could ask you if you'd be amenable to a continuance and go back to your client one more time and ask them, or I'll just ask for a motion.
I'd certainly do that.
You would do that?
Sure.
And again, I hear what the public is saying. I heard what the select board said last Monday night or 2 Monday nights ago. I've never seen such unanimity about an issue. No more Title V's in the ground. Again, they don't have a regulatory authority to make that happen, but they rely upon us. And when I see that kind of momentum building, and I see the mess that we're in, I would like to take advantage of that momentum, and any client that would be willing to step up and pay a few extra dollars, I know it's a lot more than a few, but, and in light of the fact, we don't know what Phase 2 is going to be. We just don't. And we don't know what the watershed permit application is going to look like. We don't know, even if we make one, if we can keep that permit. At some point down the road, you know all this stuff. You were here telling us about it less than a year ago. At some point, if we got ourselves into a real fix, all the bets are off, and there'd be a lot of IA systems going in the ground.
Right.
You know, I came from the field of education, and when a school wasn't doing its job, the state came in and they take receivership of that school. I fear that a day could come where the state would come in and take receivership of what we're doing here because we're failing to protect our environment. You know, I don't know what mechanism they would use to do that, but that crosses my mind. In fact, I had a person today in my kitchen talking with me, saying the exact same thing. He said, I don't get it. He said, the state would come in and take receivership of a school in a heartbeat if everything was going wrong. What's preventing them from coming in and taking receivership here and steering the ship straight to make something clean again? You know, we do have a big, big problem here, bigger than I think a lot of people in this town realize. And when this one little piece comes over the desk, I'd like to grab it and maybe help that problem get resolved a little bit better. So with your consent, I'll ask for a motion for a continuance.
Okay?
Drew, do we have a time and a date?
March 9th at 6:18 PM.
March 9th at 6:18. Hold on a second. Okay. I would accept a motion for a continuance if there is one.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you.
Erin, you can have this one, and I'll
You-
second Erin's motion.
I'm just gonna, for the record, put you down for the motion. You made it first. I just like the
Okay,
procedure.
all right,
Easier that way.
all right, yes, thank you.
I missed that one for the record. What was that?
She made the motion first, so I'm gonna document it as
You're
Marjorie
going to
made the motion.
document. Okay, so the motion is from.
We have to do the meeting minutes now, so
That's right, I know.
I'm trying to go for simplicity here, given the
Any,
workload.
Does this make me a veteran?
Yes.
any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Marjorie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn. Good to see
You
you
want to
again.
stay for our
Yeah,
next
thanks.
hearing?
I'll be here.
Okay. We got through all the paperwork, kind of, sort of.
Thanks.
Our next scheduled hearing is for 6:30 from the town of Mashpee. It's a public comment for proposed amendments to Regulation 5, filing fees, and Regulation 30, prevention of pollution, effect of nutrient loading on water bodies, rivers, ponds, streams, estuaries, and/or the ocean, and impacts to public or private water supply under the Mashpee Chapter 172 Wetland Bylaw. This is a hearing for public comment, so I will open that up for the public that is in attendance
I think we should have to
and/or
sign up.
the
There's
public
just too
that's
many.
on the internet or calling in or anyone. Both of these regulations have been put onto our website. They've been there for a while, quite a while, actually.
Yep.
At our last meeting, we looked at the draft language of both of these regulations that have been provided by the Bylaw Review Subcommittee, and the commission voted to accept the language in those regulations individually, both Regulation 5 and Regulation 30. By the time we got to that, it was very late in the evening. I felt as though it was prudent to table the public comment for that, re-advertise in the newspaper for tonight, and so here we are. And I did a lot of work with Drew and with Alex and with Brian on these, so I'm very familiar with everything that's in there. I know you guys have looked at it as we brought it before you. I don't have any comment or questions. I'm thrilled with Regulation 30. I think it's very fair. It will tremendously help us. We had a few hearings tonight where people were coming in and still wanting to put Title V's in the ground, and Regulation 30 just isn't going to allow that. And, you know, we're very late to the plate, so to speak, but better late than never. The DEP is going to come in at some point, and they're going to just drop the hammer and say, clean it up. I don't know when that'll be. Everybody is waiting. Every morning I get up, I turn on the television thinking they're going to announce something, and they haven't. But it's coming. We all know that. Glenn, would you like to comment? Have you seen Regulation 30?
I have not seen it yet, so I can't comment on
Yeah. I think it's very fair. It's an old regulation that was rescinded, reserved, pulled off because we just couldn't enforce it. I wasn't here at the time, but it was
I had
unenforceable.
sought your opinion previously, Glenn, when because the threshold, it has a threshold of parts per million, the original iteration of Reg 30, and it was 5 parts per million, using the
Is this,
nitrogen.
part of the Bob Sherman nitrogen loading,
This is the
old
one.
bylaw that he had?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And he used the Cape Cod Commission nitrogen calculation worksheet.
Yes.
And I remember speaking to you about the 5 parts per million threshold, and is that really achievable? Not just for septic systems, but all inputs to nitrogen, stormwater runoff, fertilizer usage. And it just seemed at the time, based on conversations with you and with various other consultants, and, the commission, and just doing a lot of research on it, that just seemed to be a thoroughly unachievable parts per million, 5 ppm. There is no technology out there that can achieve that currently, other than sewering, which takes the nitrogen right out of the picture, essentially. But, yeah, so that's why we rescinded it, because it just wasn't being enforced by the commission. It wasn't feasible to enforce. And so we took it off the table and then revisited it to make it more workable and certainly more enforceable. So now is it 19? 19 parts per million is the threshold. And then there's a range for more severely impacted water bodies of, I think it's 5 to 19 for some of the more severely impacted water bodies. But we did spend quite a few hours working on this revision to the regulation to make it realistic in terms of enforceability. So,
It's something we feel as though with today's technology, it can be achieved. 19, that's cutting the Title V pretty much in half. And that also gives us some leverage on other sources of, pollution that's coming off of the lot, whether it's fertilizer, stormwater runoff, roof drain, you name it. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, the 19 was, again, you said DEP was assumed at 50% of the nitrogen from a single-family home. And I think they're finding out that the nitrogen levels are much higher than that, and the IA systems are actually more effective. But unfortunately, because of the maintenance of them, they don't always meet that 19. And actually, from what the county has said, it's more like 50% of the time they actually meet the 19. So
Yeah.
even that number is a tough number to get.
right.
And years ago, actually back when they were doing the feasibility study for the comprehensive wastewater management plan, they did the modeling runs. And the modeling runs, when they proposed to put every home in Mashpee on an IA system using the 19, it didn't get them to the TMDLs.
Wow.
And so we looked at that specifically because we were going to do something way back in, I think it was 04 or 07 when they did those modeling runs. And we just knew we couldn't get there. And that's why the Board of Health at that point never made any attempt to do anything with townwide IAs, because we couldn't get there. And that's why we had to wait for MEP to finish and the CWMP to be finished, and set the priorities for what areas needed to have 100% removal and be sewered.
Right.
And I think that's still the way to approach this, to look at those areas that are prioritized by the CWMP. Not to say that a combination of all those may work. And I think that needs to be looked at too, as far as the modeling, and going back to SMAS to have them do the modeling to see if we do all these IAs, are we going to get there before we go and put this on each homeowner?
Right.
To do that, because the numbers are going to be staggering as far as the amount of money that has to be done on a per property basis.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not going to say it's going to approach what we're going to be paying individually for sewers per property, but I think it's going to be close. And those are the numbers that really need to be looked at.
Yeah.
It's going to cost a lot of money to clean up the mess.
Right.
One of the concerns that I have, I look at an area where I live, the Seabrook area. I think of Monomoskoye, Secaucet. There's no plan to get sewer pipes down there. And I think of, you can't get any closer proximity to the water than those areas.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, systems, I know in my neighborhood, every system is close to 30 years old. They're gonna start failing. So if we can have a mechanism in place to slowly but surely start dropping some IA systems in,
Yeah.
every little bit's gonna help.
Yeah.
And I know it's expensive, but what isn't these days?
Yeah, and Brian Baumgartel, the former chair, and I have had the discussions about doing these IAs on a town-wide basis. If they're going to be required either through DEP or Board of Health or through Conservation, they have to be considered part of the infrastructure. You know, that the town is sharing in the sewer project, which right now looks like it's going to be phase one. Don't know if phase two is ever going to get done, but if the balance of the town is going to be putting IA systems in, there's going to have to have townwide oversight of those. And what I talked to in the Board of Health with Brian is that the costs for the IAs need to be shared as well. And there's got to be some instrument to do that so that at least an initial cost for the systems, and then the homeowner can bear the installation and the maintenance.
Yeah.
But if there's a way for the town to share the overall costs and treat them as infrastructure, which I think is the way to do it, because the numbers, people just aren't going to have the ability to do it on an individual homeowner's basis.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the town should be looking for state and federal assistance to get this done.
Right.
I get it. I know Brian's last presentation, he was talking about a way of networking these tanks together and using technology to monitor them. And basically, it would be like your furnace. You would have a contractor come in and take care of that, because the individual homeowner, and I'll go back to the conversation that we had one night about IAs, and you said, well, you could just put a little cat food down the drain and keep that system going for those people that aren't here year-round.
Right,
People aren't gonna do it, you know, and somebody's gotta step to the plate and get that done.
right.
Or we're going nowhere, but backwards. So Drew, I'm going to defer to you. We have no further public comment.
Nope.
Do we take a vote to accept this, or just?
No, so at this point, just speaking from procedure, when you're amending regulatory language, is if there's no other comments to change the existing proposed draft language, either from the public or the commission, then that current draft language gets sent to town council for his review. I can't set a date for promulgation until town council gets back with his review. That may be in time for the next meeting, and we'll post it as, you know, in the event that he gets back to us within that time frame, which hopefully he should, as promulgation.
Yeah.
And then you would take a vote as the commission to promulgate both sets of regulations. If town council's gets back and has some substantial changes to the wording, it may require, again, posting for public comment if the changes are substantial. If they're minor, the commission can vote to accept, you know, those changes and then move on with promulgation as advertised in the paper. But there's no need to vote on anything at this point. It's really just, the next step is
Great.
promulgation. Then you vote to promulgate it in its
Right.
final form, so.
Okay, good.
yeah.
And do I need a motion to close this hearing?
No, I don't think so. You can if you want to, but I don't think it's necessary. So.
Okay.
Thanks, Glenn. Good to
Thanks,
see you.
Glenn.
Okay, then, the only thing that's left on our agenda for hearing is that certificate of compliance. We're okay?
Passed
with
both,
that?
yeah.
That passed?
Yeah, there was 2 COC requests and they both passed.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So we're back up to the pre- and post-hearing agendas. I know there was some type of a discussion on educational outreach under water quality. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to raise that, but, you know, it's late, and I think we're all in agreement here that we talked before we had the forum and the public came. We thought we had a good turnout. We talked about education. I wanted to make sure that we kept it on, you know, the top of our agenda as a commission to do outreach and to get the word out, particularly about the question for the town meeting. So I think we've taken care of, for right now, what we can do with the regs, but I just wanted to keep it to the front. We wanted to, as individual members, we wanted to take advantage of any work that's been done without duplicating the effort that's been done by Drew, by you, Mr. Chairman, and others who have been really, I think, forthcoming among the citizenry, just the volunteers and the advocates, so that we can have a cohesive message, get maximum education, maximum input, and maximum attendance at the town meeting. I mean,
Well, we'll get a little bit of television time Monday night at the select board meeting.
Okay.
because Those articles will be presented, and both Drew and I, and you're more than welcome to come as well.
Great.
If you want to speak public comment, I think it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'll be glad to come for moral support. I don't know if you need me to speak, but eloquent as I am.
It's the first time I heard you say you don't need me to.
If my kids were here, they'd go, no, seriously, this is the moment. But so, yeah, I think that's good, and we don't have to belabor it now, but I think Drew has filled us in on all the work that's gonna be done to do output, and so I think, speaking only for myself, I think I'm happy to continue to work with everyone individually, get the word out to the commissioners. I know Eric and Alex and I were putting together a message, and we talked earlier, Aaron, Drew is happy to have our message get to him and have us all coordinate that and do a grand outreach, and I suspect,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, you feel the same way.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of the people, and I do want to thank all those people who
Yeah.
came to our last meeting. I've seen several of those people since that meeting individually. They've
Yeah.
either at the grocery store or on the street somewhere. And I know they are going to be heavily engaged in an educational outreach. So I have a feeling by the time you get another month down the road,
Yeah.
you're going to see information about these articles everywhere.
Good. Well, what I would like to ask, though, formally, is that we as a commission either approve or adopt individual language, whether it be for a flyer, or whether it be for an email that we can all disseminate, so that it's really clear. You know, in my political world, it's always been, remember to say please, remember to say thank you, and don't forget their name. And so the people that showed up,
Right.
they were really important in so many ways in previous town meetings,
They're engaged.
so much.
They realize how serious of an issue we're
And
dealing
everything
with.
that we're talking about right now, they know. There are two groups in particular that are Mashpee Clean Waters and Sag Poppy Bay that are going to be requesting individual meetings with our delegation of state legislators and members of Congress, and you've
good.
you've said the same thing.
Yeah.
So, because there is money available, there is activity in Washington and in Beacon Hill, that's one. And then taking that whole question forward and including more and more people within the public, because receivership is, I know you weren't kidding, but it's a very, very real possibility.
I don't know what mechanism would be, but I mean, when this person was outlining the scenario to me today, I thought, this makes a lot of sense.
Oh, it
Because I've
does.
seen many schools go into receivership.
I was in the legislature when Brockton went into receivership,
Yeah.
and they abutted my district so much. It turned out to be a very, very good thing for Brockton families and for children, because you know what? It diverted attention, political power, and money into a system that was broken. We are broken in Mashpee as far as our water goes. We are broken,
Well, when you get on the front page of the New York Times, you know.
and not in a good way.
Right.
Anyway,
And-
so
And
I-
the state does regulate education, but they also regulate the environment.
Oh,
So,
my gosh.
You know, the comparison that was being made to me today was
Yeah.
eye-opening. It was shocking, and it all made sense. And I said to this person, do you mind if I use that and talk about that
Good.
at our meeting tonight? Because I think it's a valid point.
Right, and never forget all the money for Clean the Harbor, Clean the Bay, Boston Harbor, the Charles River, all of that came about due to outrageous neglect and letting those waters get as bad as they were. And we as legislators were all taken out to all the islands, and we're knee-deep in sludge when asked to vote on. That's how they got their attention, political power, and money. And Mashpee, let's just stay here. All of the Cape needs it. I don't mean to go off on a rant, but in Mashpee, that's what we need is political power, attention, and money.
Well, I lived in the middle of ground zero with the Nashua River Project.
Oh, wow,
I
yeah.
recall that,
Same
being
thing.
red one day and yellow the next and blue, whatever those Fitchburg paper mills were dyeing the
Exactly.
paper.
Yeah.
That's what the river became. To the point where you'd have to roll up your windows. There wasn't a single living organism left in the Nashua River other than
Terrible.
sewer worms. That was it. Today, 50 years later, the turbidity level is down to almost zero.
Yeah.
The water's crystal clear. The banks are still stained. But there's 20 different species of fish now thriving
Yeah,
in the
that-
Nashua
that-
River.
and that
So
comes from
it's a
activism.
50-year window. I hate to say it, I'm not going to be around for 50 years, but this place can turn around.
Oh, I think so.
But it takes willpower, it takes political will, it takes a lot of money, and we've got a big job on our hands.
Yeah, so anyway,
Other updates?
thank you for allowing
Drew?
me.
Yeah, I'm
Put
going to
that
run
back
through
on the
them kind
agenda.
of quickly because I know it's getting really late, so.
Oh, it's early, it's not even midnight.
No, it's late.
You're so good at this, Drew. Boom, boom, boom.
All right, here we go. So for Red Brook Road culvert, there's ongoing funding research for the planning and permitting phase. Upper Quashnet restoration, ongoing finalization of permit level plans. I don't have any specific date yet for when permitting will begin, but as soon as I hear back, I'll make that known. Johns Pond, Santua Pond, no new updates. We're kind of, myself and DNR director are bogged down in preparation for town meetings, so we don't really have time to pursue the Santua Pond reach out for public education, and plus with the horsepower restriction coming up, I think overloading with information on Santua Pond might not be a good idea at this point in terms of, dealing with invasive species. The pond has a host of problems, and I'm not downgrading the invasive species, it's just a lack of time at this point. Chopchick Bog restoration, local permitting should begin within the next month or so for approval of local wetland, commission approval for wetland restoration. No new updates for the local comprehensive plan. Land acquisition subcommittee, again, we're just kind of overwhelmed with a lot of things, and I'll get to that as soon as I can. Mashpee River Trail modifications, I am going to reach out to town council to see if there's a way we can get around the requirement for a full-blown surveyed plan for a switchback trail. So I'm putting that on hold as well. Guided Mashpee Nature Tours, new tour dates are posted for March. Herring Warden updates, do you want to give just a kind of update, because you did the walkthrough there with,
Yeah,
Scouts
so,
yet? No?
not yet. Not that I've heard.
So DPW, Conservation, and parts of the tribe have been talking and looking at the dam over at the Mashpee River. That's the fish ladder as well. That dam has been downgraded from fair to poor, which basically means that it needed immediate attention. So we are starting to look into funding sources through NCRS for a, what's it called?
For
A
planning.
feasibility plan?
Feasibility
assessment.
study, like a
Yeah.
hydraulic study.
So I went out and collected data just on scouring of the banks, 'cause it's an old cranberry area. There's some cutback of vegetation on the bank we'll take care of. Sedimentation in that section of Mill Pond from the fish ladder to Mill Pond is completely outrageous, to the point where water levels go from 18 inches to basically 2.5 inches at one point. Because of the sediments just building up. And basically because you have natural things like logs in the river, and the sediment just can't get beyond it at all. And then you can literally go to Mill Pond and see in the middle, the sediment has come out a little past halfway in the middle of the pond. You can walk out, it's about 3 inches deep, 4 inches deep, in the middle of that pond, where the sediment is, so. All that's gonna have to be paid attention to, as well as the structure of the dam and the fish ladder itself. So we are working with NCRS to get feasibility assessment funding, and then from that point on, we're going to be basically either repairing the dam, replacing the dam, or any other options that would come up from engineers or contractors. So,
Get your shovels ready.
God, what a
Yeah.
heartbreak.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really old structure, the Fishway, and, you know, the upper portions of the Mashpee River, starting at the outlet cage at Mashpee Pond where it begins, all the way to where it goes underneath the culvert here at Great Neck Road, there's a series of old cranberry bogs. And the bogs were bermed up to separate themselves from the river, and now these old earthen berms are breaking down, and the river is going from an average of 10 feet wide to 25.
They are
To
crying.
30 feet wide. And it's just a natural breakdown from old bog structure.
Yeah.
So all of that needs to be looked at holistically with this whole stretch of river. Once you get from Great Neck Road down to 28 and then so on out,
Yeah.
it takes a much more natural path because there weren't any real disruptions to flow historically, like cranberry bogs and, you know, old cedar shingle mills and things like that. So that stretch of the river is relatively still in its natural condition. It's this stretch, the upper stretch, that has been heavily modified over the years that really needs to be looked at and restored. So, thanks. It's great that we have organizations like the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, that can offer funding for these types of projects. Anything related to fish passage, they have funding, federal funding for. So, we've got no shortage of fish passage problems in Mashpee, so.
It's coastal.
Yeah, unless it's coastal, right, exactly. So, thank you, Dan. Couple of other things, just, you're all aware that there is a conflict of interest, online exam that you're required to take, whether you're associate or full-time. All board and commission members, all employees of the town have to take yearly conflict of interest exams. Very simple, it's set aside, expect about an hour to do
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Should you take those,
They've done that.
is it necessary to take those online?
You have to take
You
it.
have to.
You have to take that, you build, and then you take the exam?
Yeah.
They've changed the protocol on that. Last time we took it, you printed your certificate and you turned that in.
That's what I heard.
Now it's
Now
been-
you log in, you create an account for yourself.
Right.
Is
You
it the
pass the
honor
course.
system? Yeah?
They give you the certificate, you can get a copy of that, but I think it's sent automatically to the.
Automatically
clerk.
to
To
HR.
the state?
To HR, the Human Resources
Yeah, it's
Department here.
HR and then it's.
They're the ones that oversee
okay.
the requirement for taking the exam.
Well, we really should, anyway. We-
I saved both of this, there's two different certificates, there's a 1-hour course, and then there's a 10-minute follow-up, and an acknowledgement
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
And then
But
they-
that's,
they
I've
give
got
you-
that link. That is not the same thing, though. This is a query, not a rhetorical question. That's not the same thing as the online, is it the MCAS course update?
Oh, I'm not sure.
MACC. is-
Oh, MACC.
MACC?
It's different.
Right,
It's different.
It's different.
that's
Yeah.
different,
Totally
that goes
different.
to
Yeah.
the Mass Association of
Because
Conservation
yeah,
Commissions.
they look good, but it's just, there's just so much, many hours in the day, and I'm
Right.
trying to prioritize, so I'll start with this one.
Couple of other items, they weren't specifically, this is kind of unanticipated topics, but just a general inquiry. So we did this previously when the commission had a different makeup, but one of the former commissioners, Brad Sweet, had asked about getting an ID card from the town to recognize, so you are identified as a member of the Conservation Commission. So if anyone's interested in that, all you have to do is send us a head picture, and we can forward that on to the police department, have an ID made for you, and you can pick it up at the town manager's office, but that's all it requires, is just sending us your picture, and then we can take it from there. So if anyone's interested, just give us a call or shoot us an email.
Does it give me
We can
preferred
encourage you to
seating
do
at
it.
town meetings or
If you go out on a
anything?
site visit, people don't know who you are, what
Right.
you're doing, you can tell
Why are
them
you
who
here?
But then they say, well, how do I know that?
Yeah.
You've got the
Right.
badge, then
Yeah,
at least you can be identified.
yeah, so.
Okay.
Will they let
just-
us know when they're available?
Yeah, as soon as they come in, we'll let you know, and then you can come. They usually, I think they're picked up at the town manager's
All right.
office. And the last item is our next two meetings are going to be conflicted with Finance Committee. This always happens around when you get close to
Oh,
town
yeah.
meeting. Finance Committee wants to be on television, so we will not have the availability of this room for both meetings on March 9th and March 23rd. So the question that we posed to the commissioners, and I know we don't have a full representation tonight, is if you would prefer to have those meetings over at the library in the main conference room there, or have them both entirely over Zoom and remote with no live participation.
I'd rather go to the library.
Library, yeah.
So an important question is, if there's coffee available at the library, right?
We can arrange that.
We
See?
can arrange
We can
that,
arrange
yeah.
I agree, I like the library.
Yeah,
I do so many Zooms
Yeah.
every week.
Library,
Oh, you do
Aaron?
too,
That
Aaron?
worked well.
yeah.
It's an away game, but it
You have a
seems to
problem
work.
with it?
It's a nice conference room,
Yeah.
No, Zooms are fun, but I do so many Zooms every week, I'm Zooming
I sent
out.
it to Catherine. Is that
Zoom
on
that-
Old Oak Road?
Yes.
Yeah, I sent it
It's
to
a pretty
Catherine.
serious.
It's been like that for about 2 months now.
Oh, I know that. That's right across from Jacob's.
What's that?
I'm going to bring it up.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Okay, that's all the updates
What,
I have.
I'm curious as to, I'm showing the picture from Great Oak Road of all the sedimentation that's getting into the catch basin.
Oh,
What is that? It's an outfall
sign
pipe of some type.
They
Yeah,
put
come
some
on, let's
kind
do
of
this.
drainage in
Yeah,
back. That's
yeah.
all I
Is
know.
that on private property? Is it part of the association?
That's all, I believe that's,
It's
New
not
Secret.
working. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's a ton of riprap in there, and they've
Right.
got a lot of stuffed socks around it.
when I started this job, that silt fence was not there, and you couldn't even see the drain.
Right.
Then 2 weeks later, the silt fence was there and the drain was completely cleared, and now you see there's about a foot of sand
Is that
around the
that
whole
private
drain.
gated little subdivision
Yes.
across from?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And the entrance is further down going towards the beach to
Right,
get in
yes,
there.
yeah,
But I've never
yeah.
gone in and come back
I'm-
to see
I
whose
don't
property
mean to
it
hover
is.
I looked up the name
My
of the road,
fingers
begins with
up.
an
I'm,
S.
I'm sorry, I'm dying to get home.
I sent it to Catherine,
But
because
that has to be something that we conditioned, right? At some point in
I'll
time.
have to do the research. on
I
that.
didn't look up
Wondering
any
if we have the
permitting.
right to enter the property to get a closer look at it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
let me do a little investigating
it's
on
a
that.
mess.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
But
only
it's
getting
definitely
worse.
within, it's in the flood.
It's stopping all the drainage on the Great Oak.
You're
Road
what, a
section.
left-hand?
There's no
No, I
drainage
said I
when it
haven't
rains.
heard.
So I'm
because of that
assuming the
sand.
DPW
yeah,
will
so
clean up
I'm
the drain and put the fence up, or?
My question to
Do
Catherine
what I
is more
want to
like,
do.
are you aware of this? And if you are, like, was there a plan or? anything?
Yeah,
You know, I just
it's
don't-
got to be addressed. I
I
mean,
just don't.
I just won't do what I
I just
wanted
noticed
to
it
do.
this, not noticed it, but I just pursued it this week because of it, so.
Well, I was down looking at the Keel Way thing, and I came around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
Aaron, just let us know when you can come in and sign the permits that were approved tonight, if you're available tomorrow or early
Yeah, I
next
can
week.
come in tomorrow. I'll be
Okay,
there.
okay. Just contact Stacy, let her know.
Okay.
Thank you. No other,
Will you pass these down for the chairman? Oh, I'm sorry, we still haven't adjourned yet, have we?
We have not. I'm waiting to
Mr. Chairman, may
entertain
I
a motion.
respectfully make a motion to adjourn?
yeah.
Yes, you may.
Here, I so moved.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
I think you're a third on that one,
Oh,
Cindy, but
sorry.
that's okay. Any discussion? Hearing none? Marjorie, you okay to leave?
Yes, sir.
Sandy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Meeting adjourned.
Yay.